I feel all in the it's pretty shit. Feel safe in the road, big boy when I drive. Never off a different music at the same damn time. See me live, that shit is not for me. One option for everybody, but try me. Too many rules, too curious to try. You know, I'm for the shame, but it's side of me. Tease my curves, time to never let it back on curves. And my heart to us to surge. I'm gonna kill you, over that world, these shit. It's not something you do, but let go. It's a beautiful thing for the time. I'm all with the shit, but I get low, I'm a long time, I'm on my own time. I let it go, I let it go. I get a new crib, I get 2 kids, until I get a bachelor, nobody makes me feel like this music shit does. So I'll be like, you these girls, but it's all said and done. sound and the wow. He picked up his son with a great big smile, rapped every single word to the newborn child. Then he put him down and went back to the kitchen and put on another key and got back to the mission and get his mama out of here, put her somewhere in the woods, keep his lady looking good, have her rolling like she should, show us niggas it's a way, after that 50 years, get his homie out of jail, put a lawyer on his case, throw a concert out of school, show us that it's cool, throw some candy on the cat and try to use it as a food, and it feels good when it happens like that, 2 days you going back to selling crap,
Where do the smiles of the black man go? Where do the smiles of the black man go? Cute black boys become feared black men. And so what then? Should they shrink and become pliable in your hand? Forget that they are leader, fierce warrior, erase that they are in fact a man. A black man smiles and it becomes a banner of protection spread across his being that reads, what you see here is a black man, but these teeth don't bite. Yes, these hands are strong, but they have no cause to fight. In my presence, you're alone. Because why should a black man, a grown black man, crush his bones in order to fit neatly into the back pocket of his oppressor? Why should a grown black man have to minimize his fortitude and remove his teeth to move freely about the land? You pay him less, incarcerate him more, section him with ease, build walls round about him that neither he nor anyone descended from his loins could climb. Tell him he can stay here if. Black man, you can be free here if. Always a condition, always a reason not to honor humanity dressed in melanated skin. But we tell ourselves when huddled together with nothing but liberation and revolution on our minds that we need to build our own tables and pull up all the seats. But we're forgetting that our men can't be seen with tools. Do you remember what happened when we were holding a bag of Skittles? Our skin alone a loaded weapon, hair political and defiant a declaration. And how many times have black folk built something only for it to be stolen and used for the white man's feet to rest upon? Where do the smiles of the black man go? Where do the smiles of the black man go? The smile of the black man, where does it go? The smile of the black man, where does it go? The smile of the black man, where does it go? Thank you.
It's time to introduce myself. I'm Leanne Emma. This is my daughter Eden Rose. Thank you.
Good evening, troublemakers. How are you all? We're back again for Uppity. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming out. It's a delight to see you all. But let's put our hands and our hearts together once again for Vian Ima. And little Vian Ima. So, So, can we know a bit more about both of you just for a second? Can you both come forward? Because Vianne, you are something of a force, and so is your daughter. We just need to know, just tell us a tiny bit more about yourselves. So, we know you're speaking tonight, but we just want to know how, again, mother and daughter forced together. Please just give us a little bit more about yourself so we can know a bit more. Please.
Well, this is the first time we've performed together.
That deserves a round of applause.
Well, you can talk for yourself, but she's 16, she's my firstborn, and music's just something that's big for us. But what I do, I'm a poet, singer, songwriter, and I've been doing it for many years. Then, you know, family life takes over, and I raise my children, and then it's like, yeah, I just felt the pull that just to return to my writing, to my activism, and I just haven't stopped since. So even though I have a big brood at home, my heart is for my people, my community, especially black women. And so I use my art, my words, my poetry, my songs to just amplify our causes, our heart. And I'm moved by, you know, the needs of all marginalised communities, and that's kind of where my advocacy lies. So yeah, I'm just leading my daughter to follow me down this path.
Well, I've been playing the flute since I was about 8 years old, and I played other instruments along the way, like the guitar, trombone, different things, but I'm just really passionate for music.
Thank you so much to both of you. We could not be more grateful to you for the blessed opening you gave us tonight. So you've now heard from the gentle side of Uppity, from the beautiful side of Uppity. Now you're going to hear some ugliness. You're going to get into some dark, deep, dirty business. I don't know how to put this microphone up. Should I just... Oh, there we go. That's it. Figure it out. Technology. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Uppity, first of all. Those of you who haven't been here before, welcome. Welcome very much. It's good to see you all. It's an absolute delight to have you in this building. Beautiful faces, very diverse room. That's what we like to see. We are doing our job as we're supposed to be doing our jobs. That's a great thing. We join here tonight on the eve of the 140th anniversary of the Berlin Conference. That is the conference in which that was one of the humanity's greatest conspiracies, successful conspiracies ever, in which European powers assembled themselves in a room in a place called Belin and decided that they're going to chop Africa up into little European colonies or so and make us pretty much little Europeans. Dare I say they were fairly successful to a certain degree. But of course, like every revolution or so, like every assault, there's always going to be the counter-assault, and this forms part of that. So we're going to touch on the 140th anniversary quite a bit. We've got one of our great thinkers, one of our scholars, one of our scholar warriors, Deli Owens in the building. Round of applause for him, first of all. Deli Owens is an author of absolute note. He's somebody who you should read his work. He wrote a book which has gone crazily successful in America. It's a book called A Slave Ship Called Jesus, which is about the actual first slave ship that was actually sent into Africa by I believe Queen Elizabeth I, also by Elizabeth I, and John Hawkins all those years back. So it's quite a lot, and the book thankfully is for sale tonight. But we'll come back to Deli in a second. For brothers and sisters, siblings of all genders and none, we have some trouble to discuss. I don't know if you followed the news or not, but I found myself in a lot of trouble last week. So I'm currently suffering from that's why I'm wearing this heavy car. I'll take off in a moment. But I found myself in a lot of trouble. I couldn't believe it. I found myself in a lot of trouble in the media. Or as I call them, the KKK. The Queen Kemi crew. So, we meet tonight in perilous times. Really, really perilous times. And we're going to switch our phones off or so, or our watches too, or it's going to get even more perilous. Gary Lineker is out at the BBC. Justin Welby is out at the Church of England. Kamala Harris is out of the White House. Donald Trump is in to the White House. Sorry, can I ask you, Kamala Harris losing, are we mourning this or are we celebrating this? What do we say? So if you think it's a good thing that Kamala Harris lost, rise to your feet right now. There's a heavy Trump contingent in the room. Know your enemies. And let me just move this microphone up here a little bit so I can get away from these guys. And so here, I don't need another dagger in my back. Last thing I need is another dagger in my back. So we've got mourning Kamala. If you're mourning Kamala Harris's loss, can you please stand up? Let's see, who's mourning Kamala Harris's loss? There we go. This is what you call nice people. Yeah, there we go. This is what we call. Amy, you too, you're mourning her. You're in the wrong place. You don't know. It's a revolutionary household. Look, Donald Trump is out. Donald Trump is back in full effect, or so he's going to deport a lot of people if he really follows through on his promises, which I don't think he can. So I hate to disappoint those of you who like deportation, like our friends and Dylan and everybody else or so, but something even more scary happened. The gap-toothed goddess won. Kemi Badenoch is the leader of Her Majesty's loyal opposition. We are in trouble. And do you want to know something crazy? The first person they made an example of was me. I couldn't believe it. I was just tweeting something really just like, okay, I wrote this really funny piece. Even though I'm a satirist, I'm a writer, I do many different things, I cause a lot of trouble, but I bring a lot of harmony and peace and love to the world. I like to think I'm a force for good on this planet. I like to think I'm going to leave this planet in a better place than I found it. If you believe in that, please give me a round of applause. Thank you very much. Thank you. That's why I love Uppity. You guys are really good for the ego. So what happens is I found myself in a lot of trouble really quickly because I wrote a piece called The 7 Rules for Surviving a Kemi Badenoch Victory. And I wrote it for here. I wrote it for the Uppities. But stupidly, I put it on Twitter. And text doesn't convey emotion. So they read it, so you had press people which gone crazy, like, oh my God, I can't believe you wrote this. And then somebody called Dawn Butler retweeted it. All hell broke loose. My agent started to receive hate mail by the bucket load. I have been reported to the police dozens of times. So before we know it, I might... No, I don't think so. But yeah, in fact, I don't prophesy negative things for myself, so they would never take me alive. I was even reported, believe it or not, to the Prime Minister at Prime Minister's question time. One member of Parliament. I might be the first satirist who stung so hard that his joke had to get reported to the Prime Minister. Somebody got up in pre-Qs and thought that the 50,000 people I represent, they had nothing that's of significance or of interest to the Prime Minister, but what this bloke said on Twitter must be raised to him. And this clown gets up and says, Prime Minister, and he just repeats my joke. And I can't lie to you. I was bloody flattered. It was the biggest one of the biggest achievements of my writing career. Like, hold on, roasting people is a skill, but to roast somebody to the point where it goes to the Prime Minister, it blew my mind. I just sat there watching. I can't believe this is happening. So, for your consumption, brothers and sisters, siblings of all genders and none, I'm going to tell you. Not the 7 rules for surviving a Kemi Badenoch victory, the 8 rules for surviving a Kemi Badenoch victory. So, should we, before we go any further, I'm tempted to say we should stand up in this prayer circle and pray for you so that they don't send the SWAT team or something like that or so, but let's just get into this, right? So Kemi Badenoch has done well here. You've got to admit that, look, Robert Jenrick ran one hell of a racist campaign. He gave it his all. He was just millimeters away from screaming white power, but he held back. He did everything he could. But still, whoever's phone that is, but he still couldn't conquer Queen Kemi. Because Kemi's racism is on fleek. It's unbelievable. You can't compete with Kemi. And she's now sitting pretty much, do you see the other day at the cenotaph? She looked like she was mourning more than you thought she was actually at Normandy or so. Her eyes were swollen. She looked like she was in pain. And I thought, so this is fascinating to watch. This is a person who excuses colonialism with a drop of a heartbeat or so, but she's there, literally, sulking her eyes out there. I couldn't believe it. So anyway, let's go into this. So look, Kemi won, we must accept that. To the victor belongs the racism. So Kemi's done well. But we still have to be aware of what Badenoch-ism is. We have to recognize what brought Kemi to the fore. And this got me into a lot of trouble saying this, so I want to make this very, very clear when I say this. Badenoch-ism is white supremacy while black. They didn't like when I said white supremacy in blackface, so I'm trying to tone it down for them. But be under no illusion whatsoever. That is rule number one. Don't be fooled. The first rule of the 8 rules of surviving Kemi Badenoch's victory and her reign as leader of the opposition is don't be fooled. The function, the very serious function of Kemi is to distract. You probably heard those words before, you just don't know where you heard them. She keeps you from doing your work. She keeps you explaining over and over again and again your reason for being. She increases your therapy bill significantly. My therapist sat down with me the other day because I developed this back in my, this pain in my, I've never experienced it before. But I comment to you, it's not easy being pressed on by the press. It's really not easy. But I developed this really hard pain in my back. And then my therapist sat me down and said to me, you know what that is? It's this concept known as Kemi derangement syndrome. That she's driving you mad. And you are going literally mad here to the point where it's developing pains. She's going to leave you in a wheelchair if you're not careful. She's not going to lay a finger on you. You need to calm down. But the first point is don't be ruled. Don't be fooled, I beg your pardon. The second point is don't allow yourself to be gaslit. Of course, a victory for Badenoch is a victory for what? Racism. A victory for Badenoch is a victory for what? Racism. Albert, I didn't hear you. A victory for Kemi Badenoch is a victory for Kemi Badenoch is a victory for what? Racism. A victory, sorry, I need the energy, guys. A victory for Kemi Badenoch is a victory for what? Racism. Good, so they're going to arrest all of us all together, so we all go to jail together. And of course, you have to understand, when racism never prevails, racism will never, ever, ever prevail. Because when it does prevail, they'll call it anything but racism. You know what they'll call it? They'll call it a historic moment that has to be celebrated, and a great moment for our nation, as Keir Starmer put it. And then suddenly, another thing you have to recognize too is that there's horses for courses. That the type, a few of you may have seen me on TV before. So I do my fair share of TV, so I'm normally there. Back in the day, until quite recently, I used to wear a pair of glasses on TV. And I actually have perfect eyesight. I don't really need glasses, but I used to wear glasses to soften my image on TV, so they wouldn't make it be like I'm some sort of like I'm about to stab somebody or something. But so I wear a pair of glasses, so I don't wear a tie because I think it's the mark of the corporate noose around the neck. So I always just wear a white. I wear a white shirt and a blue blazer or so, and because the white shirt and blue blazer brown, it bounces off my really beautiful chocolate face, and it does quite well for me. But one thing about when you see me on TV, one thing you can bank on is that there's going to be an element or an edge of radicalism to me. You know that. When Kemi wins, the people you won't see on TV are people like me. The people you will see on TV are people like Sundar Katwala or a man called Trevor Phillips, who you probably don't know who Sundar is, but you must know who's Trevor. Do you all know Trevor Phillips? Do we like Trevor Phillips? Absolutely. Okay, there we go. I'll be speaking. So you'll see a lot of Trevor, but you won't see a lot of Nels, and that's fine. That's okay. Horses for courses, or so. So I mean, but one thing that did really strike me, also, that I really did think of, is that when I used the term that Kemi's the black face of white supremacy, or white supremacy in blackface, people called it all sorts. But it dawned on me, if I said that Jeremy Corbyn was the white face of black lunacy, I'll be given a knighthood. I'll be in the House of Lords right now. It's fascinating, isn't it? Because you know why? Because Jeremy Corbyn is actually a threat. Whereas Kemi Badenoch is a continuity conservative that won't really make much of a difference or so to the mass majority of this population, but will prove a disaster to us. So point number 3, don't be fooled, don't feed the trolls. You'll hear a lot, with moments like this, you'll hear a lot of, you must have heard this term in the last few days, this is a bit expired now. You'll hear a lot of, whatever your politics. Have you heard that term? Whatever your politics, this is something you must celebrate. Whatever your politics, this is a great moment for our society. Whatever your politics, we must celebrate that a black person who panders exclusively to racism or so has broken the glass ceiling for all of us. We always hear these whatever your politics, these moments, and it then dawns on you that they're saying whatever your politics about a literal politician. Like, does that make any sense to you? It's like whatever your football, we've signed a crap striker. It's like, no, sorry, he's here for football purposes. But why would I not worry about my football or so, worry about the ethnicity? No. The politics matters, the football matters. If it's a wrestler or so, if you want it to be good in the ring, you want your politician to represent your interest. And this person who actually is damaging to our interest shouldn't be somebody who should be forced to sweep their politics aside. Now here's some key points I probably should have mentioned earlier on. Key point number 1, or could be this point number 4. It's a bit of a series, this. Don't get arrested. When Kemi Badenoch, when something like this happens or so, it is very, very easy to find yourself arrested. And people don't know what you could get arrested for. But there's a lot of things. Number 1, the first thing you get arrested for is this false belief that free speech exists in Britain. Britain is not a land of free speech whatsoever. You will quickly find yourself in front of a judge, or you will find yourself reported to the Prime Minister at PMQs, or you'll find yourself who knows whatever so, for very, very minor speech offences or so. So please don't get arrested. Listen to the British government when they say, be careful what you post. That is a very serious thing. That is very, very serious. You must bear that attention. Point number 2, aka, or point number 5, don't get arrested. Part 2. Now, in moments such as this, when a particular type of person emerges or so, it's the custom of all people to tap into their history. So black and brown people often tap into their history too. We have terminology that we might use to describe people who collaborate with racism. I am not going to repeat it because I am literally millimeters ahead of the law at this particular second right now, so I'm not going to repeat any of those words whatsoever, but there are some lovely coconut trees at the back of those, so that if you feel like the urge to eat one, you can grab one, they're all free and everything else. But I would say don't use that to attempt. I am not playing. That will land you in front of a judge. You'll be in very, very serious trouble. Point number 6, don't get arrested. Part 3. In pursuit of protecting the feelings and political positions of ethnic minorities with far-right sensibilities, the police and the CPS will do absolutely everything in their power to physically and psychologically destroy you. I have seen young men who sent somebody an emoji on Twitter get dragged out of their house and thrown in a police cell for 19 hours for an emoji on Twitter because he sent it to a literal politician. I have seen a 9-month pregnant woman stand trial for holding up a coconut placard. She won, and we supported her to win. That was a victory for Uppity. That was a round of applause for Maria. Just a quick update on Maria. Maria's normally here month in, month out, but Maria just successfully had her baby son, third baby son. We love Maria. Maria's our sister. We are very happy for her. Point number 7. Don't get arrested. Part 4. And I'll advise you, as I just mentioned, look up these things such as the emoji trial and the coconut trial. It's really important you look up and you understand those things because it's really a testimony to the nature of the threat of free speech we face in Britain, particularly as far as black and brown people are concerned. And point number 8 is the sweetest one. Because in every crisis, in every single crisis, there's always going to be opportunity. There's always going to be that moment, that thing or so where you can actually, as they say, you never let a crisis go to waste. And there's one set of people who never let a crisis go to waste, as history has taught us. It is white supremacy. They will never ever let a crisis go to waste. So as bad as Badenockism and the threat of Badenockism and the fact that she's going to pull this government to the right or so and all sorts of other bits of crazy stuff is going to happen, one thing that we all know, sadly for her, Kemi Badenoch is not that special. Mobutu Sese Seko was not that special. Saddam Hussein was not that special. Anybody you can think of who was one time pretty much the best friend of the best friend or so was never that special. But one thing they always come to learn eventually is that it ends even worse for them. Muammar Gaddafi was not that special. But one thing they always learn, when it's all said and done, white supremacy discards its tools. Kemi too will have her moments. Her day will come. And when it comes, you know what I'll do? I will say, welcome home, Kemi. We kept the seat for you at Uppity nice and warm. Just settle down and have a seat, everything else. Now, Ladies and gentlemen, I must be, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters of all genders and none, and I must be clear, we believe in fairness at Uppity. Do we believe in fairness at Uppity?
Yeah.
We do? We believe in fairness at Uppity. Albie, do we believe in fairness at Uppity?
I don't think so.
Okay, fair enough.
We'll go with it.
We'll give, okay. In the interest of fairness, I'm actually going to, you might do the melody warm-up by myself. We're going to come back a little bit more. But I feel that because we've actually had a lot to say about Kemi, it's only fair that Kemi, or Badenockism, be given. And Mama called it Badenock, Mama called it Badenock. Badenockism, I identify her as Badenock. Okay, well, I'm not going to fight you about that. Badenockism, or Badenockism or so, just to be polite or so, because we're polite, we'll be more polite to her than she's ever been to us or so.
Why should she be polite to you?
Why shouldn't you be?
You've gap tooth got it.
That's not this. That's a description. But anyway, we'll come back to, no, that's
Why
fair.
should she be polite to you?
We'll come back to you in a second, Albie.
Well.
We'll come back to you in a second. But in the interest of fairness, also, we feel that it's fair and only appropriate that if we're going to actually give somebody, we're going to tear down Kemiism or so, or Adegokeism, or Kemi Adegokeism, not to, we're going to refer to it by her original Nigerian, very, very beautiful name. It's fair that we give somebody space to actually put the case for Queen Kemi aside. So without further ado, Albie and Kaba.
Well, it's nice to see you all. Hope you're all very well. Well, what can I say about that speech? I've made comments about how I think it is wrong to compare British politicians to people like Saddam Hussein, Mobutu, or Gaddafi. I don't really think you can compare Kemi Badenoch, or indeed any modern British politician, to those awful, evil people. So let's moderate our language, because it's important. But I'm going to talk to you about my friend Kemi, because I think she's actually got quite an inspiring story. She was born in Wimbledon to Yoruba parents, and she spent much of her childhood in Nigeria. Despite being middle class, her family often lived, or sometimes lived, without running water or electricity. She sometimes had to take her own chair to school. Have any of you had to do that? Sorry, madam.
Can you prove that?
It's untrue.
Have you? Sorry, sir. I'm not talking to you. I'm asking you. This lady here, who very clearly did not grow up in Africa, I don't think. Have you ever had to do that? Right. And you didn't have running water or electricity often. Okay, right. So I don't know why you're laughing then. At the age of 16, she moved to the UK, using her father's last savings for a ticket to live with her mother's friend.
Please put that you actually believe that.
Kemi was...
Believe that she actually did that.
Nels, shut up. I am talking, and I will finish. Kemi was always ambitious. She studied at a college in Merton, working at McDonald's to fund her education. Are we laughing at people working at McDonald's to fund their education? Wow. Okay, wow. All right. Her dedication earned her a place at Sussex University, where she graduated in 2003 with a Master's in Engineering. She began her career in IT, working as a software engineer at Logica. While there, she studied law part-time, earning her law degree from Birkbeck University of London in 2009. Her career advanced through roles at RBS, Coutts, and The Spectator, where she honed skills in tech, consultancy, and finance. In 2017, Kemi became a Member of Parliament in the country that once colonised her ancestral home. Her rise was swift. By 2019, she became a PPS. The following year, she became a minister. In 2022, she ran for the party leadership and Prime Minister, surpassing expectations and gaining more support than former chancellors and foreign secretaries. She went on to serve as a Secretary of State, striking trade deals, shaping legislation, and driving opportunities for British businesses and citizens. In a tough election, she held on to her seat, even as many colleagues lost theirs. When the opportunity came to lead her party again, that same aspirational young woman who journeyed to Britain alone at the age of 16 decided her time was now. She ran and won the support of her fellow MPs and party members. And today, she is the leader of His Majesty's opposition, and her party is outpolling the government party in national polls. Kemi's journey is a testament to what is possible, no matter what your background. She reminds us that no matter where you start, with drive and resilience, you can rise to lead, and I think she deserves a lot more respect than Nels is giving her.
Thank you, Albie, for your propaganda. Much appreciated. Thank you very much. Thank you.
What are you saying? You're calling it propaganda.
You compared her to Saddam Hussein.
Why did you give him the microphone? Take the microphone. Okay.
Brainwashing people.
Okay, I'm brainwashing people. God, the matter. They do anyway. Are you sure you're not being brainwashed, Albie? Anyway, so let's keep. Okay, fair enough. I agree. Okay, maybe I have. All right. So, okay, I will calm down. Okay. Right. So Queen Kemi's defendants, or as we like to call them, apologists, have actually spoken. And I, for 1 second, so you see what's actually funny is that I happen to know somebody quite well who walked in similar footsteps to Kemi Badenoch. His name is Nels Abbey. Believe it or not, Nels Abbey lived in the same area of Lagos as Kemi Adegoke. Nels Abbey knows this story far too well, for it is not that uncommon in the slightest bit. So what we have here is a situation in which you can stylize it as much as you like. And it has been done. One of the most fascinating things I found is that there was a Times newspaper piece on Kemi Badenoch. Kemi Badenoch, actually, just not to annoy her apologists. And in the piece, so the Times, of course, the newspaper of the middle classes. And we'll wrap up with Kemi pretty quickly or so, because we've got a lot to get into. It's a newspaper of the middle classes. And in the actual newspaper, in the actual Times newspaper by Janice Turner, they did quite a long profile on her. He was full of crap. Same thing as Tomiwa Wolade wrote a piece on her on Monday. He didn't know what he was talking about. It was full of rubbish. But what was interesting in the Times piece, the Times profile on her, and the Times, of course, was trying to promote her. So it's part of how you become Prime Minister here, or you become a leader of the opposition, a major opposition. They find ways to promote you. It's pretty obvious. But what was interesting is that they mentioned the secondary school that her husband went to, but they didn't mention the secondary school that she went to. Now, which is more important to you as a voter? The secondary school that the potential leader of the opposition went to, or the secondary school that the husband of the leader of the opposition went to? Which is more important to you, the first or the latter? Of course. But why wasn't it mentioned? Because to mention it requires them to do some actual hard research and speak to people. And when you start speaking to people about Kemi in Nigeria and everything else, it quickly unravels that she's telling this thing that we human beings call blatant lies. And I think that's where it's all going to come unraveling sooner or later or so, because somebody with a pen and with platform is going to be given the opportunity to set the lie straight. And who knows, it might fall to one Nels Abbey. And if it does, but anyway, let's wrap this up. Look, let's wrap this up quickly, because we've got a lot to get through tonight. Trump is in power. Trump is about to get back into power. And Kemi is now the leader of Her Majesty's loyal opposition. I'm not sure how loyal they are, but yeah, but Her Majesty's loyal opposition, which is actually quite frightening when you think about it. So I want to ask you guys a couple of questions. So we have a ritual here at Uppity. If you wish to stand up and say something, anybody can get up and say something. You can contribute or so. It's an open, democracy-ish type of room or so. I'm a dictator-ish or so, here and there, but we believe in democracy to a degree, kind of like Kemi's party. Anyway, the first part, we're not surrounding the Nigerians here, Albie, come on.
Don't sound again.
Well, I'm defending against the Nigerians then. But anyway, but let's come to this, right? So if you have something to say in this room, those of us who've been here before, if you have something to say, you rise to your feet and you say what? Sorry, those that not everybody can hear you. You rise to your feet and say what? You rise to your feet and say what? That doesn't matter who you are or what you are. So this is a black room. We are very inclusive, but it's a black room. I want everybody to speak. Just rise to your feet and say point of black. I don't care what you're over. So it's just our way of signifying that you've got something profound and brilliant to say, and we will give you the microphone to say it. Trump is headed back into power. Kemi is the leader of the opposition. God help us. We'll do the prayer circle. We're going to join hand in prayer later on. But I want to ask you a couple of questions. If you have any responses, please rise to your feet and offer your point of blackness. Who is more likely to bomb Africa, the Caribbean, or Croydon? Kemi Badenoch or Donald Trump? What do you think? Please let us know. So if you think it's Trump, rise to your feet. If you think Kemi Badenoch is more likely to bomb Africa, the Caribbean, and Croydon, please. Wow. So nobody went for Trump, but most of the room went for Kemi. Okay. This is interesting. Who is more likely to deport black and brown people from the West en masse? Kemi Badenoch, to use Albie's parlance, or Donald Trump? What do you think? So we've got three options. We've got Kemi, Trump, draw. So if you think it's Kemi, put your hand in the air. If you think it's Trump, put your hand in the air. If you think it's a draw, put your hand in the air. I think it's evens either way or so it looks like, okay, fair enough. Who is more likely to issue reparations for colonization and enslavement? Kemi Badenoch or Donald Trump? If you think it is Kemi Badenoch and you need your head checked, please put your hand in the air right now. If you think it is Donald J. Trump, put your hand in the air. We got a few people who believe that Donald Trump is more likely to issue reparations to repair the damage of colonization and enslavement than Kemi Badenoch. Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, yes or no, are we sick and tired of representation politics yet? Yes. It's not working, is it? It's been weaponized against us, hasn't it? Yeah. It's a shame. Anyway, on that note, so look, thank you so much. Let's give ourselves a round of applause. So, I think the melanin warm-up's meant to last about 5 minutes or so, but it's lasted about half an hour, so thanks very much. And thank you to, and round of applause for Albie also for being a good sport and actually sharing the good news about the gap-toothed goddess with us. Okay, thank you very much. Right, thanks, the good news. Okay, the news about her. Look, we assemble here tonight, as we said to begin with, on the eve of the 140th anniversary of one of the worst atrocities of human history. I am not speaking, of course, about Kemi Badenoch's election at this particular time, although that does rate quite highly in my view. That is a betrayal. But this was about the betrayal of Europeans this betrayal that Europeans inflicted upon the Africans 140 years ago. And by Africans in this situation, so that whole thing where about, hey, you're an African because some white man put us somewhere else, that doesn't mean anything to us whatsoever. An African is an African is an African. No matter whether you're in the Caribbean, whether you're in England, or so, whether you're on the mainland of the continent, so an African is an African is an African, whether you have 3 white grandparents, whatever it might, we don't care. You see, I'm a Pan-Africanist, so I don't know what you guys are up to, but I am, so I speak for myself in this situation. So I speak of Africans as black people in this with my terminology. But we are 140 years away from that event. It was a devastating event that has actually shaped so many of our lives around this room today. There's so much of how so many of us identify or see ourselves. So my great-granddad was born as a Shakiri man, and he died as a Nigerian. The same thing happened to so many other people over here too, that their whole identity was changed. In fact, just to tell you where part of my own pain comes from, I come from the Niger Delta. I'm from a small ethnic group called the Shakiri people. We're about 2 million people long, 2 million people in size or so, but we are a very, very oil-rich population. So if it wasn't for the white man showing up in what they today call Nigeria, so I would be Mohammed bin Salman, and I wouldn't be here talking to you guys about race and doing all this sort of stuff. So, but anyway, we are where we are. But the key thing about it is that tonight we assemble here today in the backdrop of something that we must never forget and something that we must ensure is embedded into the public consciousness. the Berlin Conference was a huge assault upon the Africans of all kinds you could think of. It was a conference, a collection of Europeans meeting in a room for over a series of months without a single African present, without a single African knowing what's actually happening, and discussing our fate for the next few centuries. It's important that we understand that. It's important that we understand the impact of that, and it's important that we understand how best to unravel it. And tonight, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you to put your hearts and your hands together for Dele Ogun, who's going to speak to us for about 10 minutes about this story. Thank
you. Nels, have you abandoned the protocol of swearing on?
Sorry. I beg your pardon. Sorry. I was too busy. Kemi derangement syndrome got me. Sorry.
I brought a book other than my own because last time I was accused of indirect marketing. I brought somebody else's book.
Yeah, sure. So just a quick thing, so we're streaming live on YouTube right now, so if you've said anything that's potentially criminal, then yeah, let me know. So Dele Ogun, please, who are you swearing in with?
I'm swearing on this book, The Truth About Empire.
By who?
It's a collection of academics edited by Alan Lester,
Oh, we respect
who's a
that.
professor of history at the University of Sussex.
Huge round of applause for Alan Lester. We respect him. He will be at Uppity in a few months' time, so we respect Alan Lester very, very. We rate him very, very highly. I was going to say, a good white man, Alan Lester, rare good white man. So what we're going to say, so Dele Ogun, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, the black truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you?
Alan Lester.
Thank you.
Truth
Please.
About Empire.
The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. I've been asked to speak about the Berlin Conference. Next year, 2025, there's going to be a week-long conference in Lagos, Nigeria. It is actually much more than a conference. It is a pilgrimage. It is a homecoming for all of us. Because every single one of us in this room, almost without exception, have been touched, directly or indirectly, by the deliberations that took place in Berlin in 1884. This is about identity. You see, you probably know the story about how the identity of West Indians came about. This was Christopher Columbus, who was looking for a new route to India after the fall of Constantinople, the conquest of the Ottomans of what was Constantinople, that shut down the routes to the east. And Columbus was looking for a new route. That's what took them down the coast of West Africa. And that is what eventually accounted for him sailing across to what he thought was India, but we now know is America. So that's how the identity, West Indian, arose. That's the first layer of identity for many of our people here. The other aspect of this was that in the process of the genocide against the indigents of places like Barbados, of Jamaica, of St. Lucia, etc., etc., what they did was to take Africans as we were from Africa and pour them into the new mold. So some were poured into Barbados, some were poured into Trinidad and became Trinidadians, some were poured into Guyana and thus became Guyanese. This is how the identities of many in this room was formed. That was prior to the Berlin Conference of 1884. What happened at that conference concerned the ones that remained. Because what they now did was to construct molds around those who were underground. That is the genesis of identities like Nigerian, Ghanaian, Kenyan. These new identities were molded in this way. Let me give you a short reading that gives you a sense of what happened. Saturday, 15th of November, 1884, world leaders are sat round a grand dining table in Berlin. The German Chancellor, Otto von Bismarck, is the generous host. About to be carved up is the continent of Africa and its peoples. The diners are the heads of state of the countries with claims to different parts of the continent. Britain, France, Portugal, Spain, Belgium, and Italy. Their counterparts from the Austro-Hungarian Empire, the Union of Sweden and Norway, Denmark, the Netherlands, Turkey, the United States of America, and Tsarist Russia. They attend as escorts and observers. The irony of the festival is that the various explorers that they had sent into Africa had recently returned from surveying the interior of our continent on behalf of these diners. And each of these so-called explorers returned with fantastic tales of cannibalism. But this was a cannibal feast that they were sitting down to, because it was Africans that were about to be consumed. They were about to agree the formula for carving up the joints. On February the 26th, 1885, the General Act of the Berlin Conference on West Africa was passed and the conference closed. This act of this unorthodox European Parliament was the death knell for the thousands of African nations that had been evolving at their own pace. That is our story. That is the Berlin Conference, out of which sprung Africa as we now know it. How we were taught. Yeah. She said that she ran away from Nigeria. But where was she running to? She's running to the very country that made the monstrous Nigeria that she's speaking of. It was they, Britain, that deliberately lumped 371 ethnic groups together. The same people who ran from Brexit, ran from Europe, a voluntary union that imposed a union on 371 distinct ethnic groups. Each had their own governance systems at that time. They uprooted everything that was there. It was like a farming exercise. You know how the farmer clears the ground first? Digs everything up. It was an act of criminal vandalism. As Nell said, it was the greatest conspiracy imaginable. The legacy that we're left with is this language that I'm speaking in. We're all speaking English as a consequence of that Berlin conspiracy, that Berlin arrangement. The corruption that Kemi was speaking of, where did that come from? It came from the Royal Niger Company. Because in order to uproot what was there, they had to find the compliance, the pliable, the ones who will sell their people out in order to advance their own ambitions. That was the origin of bribery. They called it annual subsidies, being paid to the rulers. The ones who would not comply, who were not compliant, they simply deposed them or killed them. And there was always a next person, a cousin or a brother, who would gladly take that position and say, how high do I have to jump? Now, I sent a tweet out in connection with Belin. I said, she is what you get when ambition outstrips ability. Because then you will do anything and you will say anything in order to get to where you want to get to. And that's what we have with Kemi Belin. She will say anything and she will do anything in order to get to where she set her mind upon. When she was first campaigning to be elected as a member of parliament, she was calling on Nigerians to support her, that I am a Nigerian. But when she gets there, she is now raining curses and slanders upon her father's land. I was on a podcast, I arrived from Lagos this morning. I was on a podcast last week. And the host summed Kemi up very well, in my estimation. He said, Kemi represents the very ones that were selling our people, who are disconnected from their own people. And for a few dollars more, an office, an opportunity, they will say anything and they will do anything. That is the mindset. When we try and defend the charge that we weren't selling our own people, but there was always one or the other who they could co-opt. And that is what Belin represents. Now, coming back to the Belin conference. We are where we are now. But we're not staying where we are. Part of the conference next year in Lagos is going to be a week-long conference, so you've got advance notice. It coincides with the fashion fair as well, the Lagos Fashion Fair, the November date, so mark it in your diary. That's why I call it a pilgrimage. We'll be going back to where the confusion began. The way forward is the way back. It was Churchill who said, the further back you look, the further ahead you'll see. And when you've traveled thus far and you've hit an alleyway, as Africa has and Africans have, the way forward is the way back. The conference next year is the process, is the beginning of the process by which we retrieve what was taken from us. Yoruba, Ijo, Ogoni, Ashanti, the real identities, and we'll give them back what they gave us. So please mark your diaries. November next year. See you in Lagos. It's a pilgrimage.
Hear me open, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, please. We're going to come. We are going to be discussing the Belin conference over the course of the entire year. So this is not a one-off. So we're not just going to do last month and this month. We're going to actually have a segment dedicated to learnings and thoughts about the Belin conference until November next year. So each month we'll have a 15-minute slot discussing that. We'll bring thinkers along. Tonight we're blessed with more than one thinker in this regard. And so before we move into our discussion on Kaba, which is our main point of focal our focus tonight. So I'm going to invite the MP for Streatham, Belle Riviera Addy. Sorry?
I get fired in between. This morning. Clapping bricks this morning.
Oh, sorry. I thought they'd given her a P45. I was going to say, no wonder she's at Uppity. There we go. So please welcome the newly minted MP for Clapham and Brixton Hill. Oh, and she's here, she's swearing in. She's swearing in this. Please, I'll come around here. You want to grab this microphone. So then, yeah, who is that? Yeah. So, Belle Riviera Addy.
Yeah.
Welcome to Uppity. Good to see you. Thank you very much. You were late. But it wasn't blackness that got you, it was Parliament, so it was whiteness that got you.
I had to end hereditary peerages.
And did you do that?
Yeah, of course.
Round of applause for that. And when we were talking about House of Lords, something does that. I'm not joking. Anyway, very there. You promise this world the truth, the whole truth, the black truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you.
Diana,
a woman like me. Please, that's all of it.
now going on from
You have 5 minutes.
5 minutes. I won't keep you longer than that. One of the things that I do in Parliament, and I'm very proud to do, is to chair the All-Party Parliamentary Group for African Reparations. And that's something that's extremely important to me. For many, many years, I had heard some of the people I respect hugely talking about this concept of reparation. For a long time, it's not something that's been considered mainstream or something that we should definitely be talking about. The idea that, you know, Africans and peoples of African descent, or even those in South Asia, for example, would look towards the UK and ask them, or any other European country for that matter, or ask them for reparations for enslavement and colonialism seemed like a very strange thing to do. But I have to ask why. I mean, we've heard all about the Berlin Conference, we heard what's happened. Actually, we know what's happened. Everybody in this room will know what the horrors of the enslavement, trafficking and torture of peoples of African descent were. There is no debate about that, there's no debate about what happened, but there's a lot of loss of information, and that, in my view, is quite deliberate. So what we do in the All-Party Parliamentary Group is we work across 3 streams. I'd call the first one community reparations, looking at an apology, looking at all the different ways in which we could go about repair. We go down to the very root of the word reparations, which is repare, taken from the Latin to repair that imbalance. Because what we're meant to be talking about today in terms of the Berlin Conference is what would we have been as peoples of African descent had we not been enslaved and colonised in the way we were. We would never know. And we start talking about reparations by understanding there is no collection of acts and no amount of money that could fully recompense for the horrors that were done during that period of time. But the idea that any country wouldn't even try is disgraceful. It is abhorrent, and it doesn't stand for all the values that they, particularly ours, for example, that they go out and preach to as well. So looking at those different ways in which we can repair those imbalances through education, through the environment. When I think about education, I think about all the things that we do not know. We do not know so many things because these histories were deliberately kept from us. The idea that there were many, many different civilizations, and there were pre-colonial forms of government, many pre-colonial forms of government. So, you know, when we hear people like Robert Jenrick and others telling us that we should be grateful for empire, we should be grateful that, you know, Britain ended the slave trade, we are meant to thank the arsonists for putting out their own fire, and we're also meant to thank them for democracy, even though these different forms of democracy in some ways haven't necessarily benefited in the way that they think they should. Some of the awful, awful pieces of legislation that come from colonial governments remain there, and I for one wish they didn't exist at all, because we see people literally using them as a means to discriminate against each other. I touch on the idea of restitution, literally the return of artefacts and the return of archives to understand where it is. I mean, you know, the previous speaker spoke about language, spoke about all of these different things that we don't know about. They will not even return items that they know, that are written down in history books about where they looted them from and how they looted them. They won't talk about that at all. And I think that is absolutely awful. And the most disgusting of all, human remains. There are human remains at the moment kept in museums. They even tried to sell some earlier this year online. The skulls of Africans put on display, put on a website and attempted to sell them at auction. We intervened and got that stopped. How many of those sales continue? And you know, we lost recently our monarch, our longest reigning monarch, Queen Elizabeth II. Could you imagine if somebody dug up her bones, took her to another country and put her on display? But that's exactly what we've done in the terms of the so-called Egyptian mummies. And when they ask them to be returned, we tell them, essentially, finders keepers. Now, that was never, that never worked in a playground. The idea that it could work in law is wrong. And actually, even sooner, so we're talking about freedom fighters from colonial struggles. Their heads are in jars across Europe, and we even have a set of bones in the British Museum that have not been returned, and they said they will, but they haven't. So these types of things are even against our own laws. So against the Human Tissues Act 2008, they should return these remains, and they don't. And the final thing that we look at in terms of those three strands is decolonising aid. In my view, it has become a form of neo-colonialism, and it's become an industry. The billions, not even millions, billions that have been pumped right across the world by different aid agencies haven't seen the development that we think, haven't seen the development that level of money should have brought. And actually, all of that money is being recycled back into the West. Billions and millions of pounds that countries are either using to pay in debt, or actually you have these aid agencies, large aid agencies. This is part of the reason why I don't get invited back to many places, because I ask them, are you willing to lose your jobs? Because if your strategic aim in your aid agency is not to bring your organisation to an end, then you are part and parcel of this business. It has become an industry. And what does every industry need? Supply and demand. Supply and demand. That means you are quite literally benefiting from keeping people in poverty. And now we are seeing that private companies are getting involved in delivering development, and that's when you know that it's quite literally this awful industry. So and that it is working on that premise of supply and demand. So whenever anybody asks you, whenever you do hear of the concept of reparations being discussed, and people say why should we pay? We've given money in aid. I want you to tell them that. Whenever people ask, what's all of this, trillions of pounds, say to them, at the end of the day, if anybody's making a claim, you've got to put a figure behind it. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's all about money. We can't have a situation where we would actually give any one country a whole load of money before we fix some of the international systems. If we didn't fix the IMF, if we didn't fix the issue in terms of the Security Council, we didn't fix all of the huge amounts of debts that countries already have, and assisting them, particularly in terms of Caribbean nations with their climate issues, and we gave them a whole load of money, that money would just be recycled into the West. So it could never just be about money. And as I said, there is no amount of money that is going to recompense, and we're never going to get to these trillions of pounds, but if we don't at least try, then everything we've got around the world preaching is essentially false. And if we don't at least try, eventually it's going to come back to bite us. Because economically speaking, the UK is falling down a scale. And this is the last point I make, because I know I've gone over my 5 minutes. Economically, the UK is falling down a scale. We have countries that we formerly enslaved, indentured, or colonised surpassing us in terms of economics. And they are achieving these things not because of anything we've done for them, but in spite of what we've done to them. And, we left our largest trading partner, Europe, Brexit, very bad idea, I voted against it. Just want all of you to know. And we're meant to be going around the world looking for friends. But we still think that Rule Britannia rules the waves. And this idea of imperialism washes over us. Rule Britannia no longer rules the waves. And yes, we are not going to be slaves, but no one else is going to be a slave either. Which means we have to start looking at a range of countries with eyes of equality and respect, or we're not going to get the trade deals that we need to survive as essentially falling economy. So yes, it's about the moral argument, but there's a very, very clear economic argument. The children of those who have had to witness this injustice are probably even going to be more bitter about this than the current generations are. And we need to understand that as a nation, people don't necessarily like us. Now, when I say all this, people say, oh, you hate your country. Go and be an MP in Ghana then, which I couldn't do. And I'll tell you that I love my country. I'm actually proud of my country, but I'm not proud of the fact that we continue to go down this road, and I'm definitely not proud of the fact that we are not looking towards righting these wrongs. So I'm going to leave that there, but I thought it was very, very important to talk about why reparations are key and the many different reasons why we should be engaged with the conversation now.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Belle. Thank you. Really, really grateful. Thank you. You would have thought that given that she spent the whole day speaking in Parliament, she wouldn't have much to say here. But Belle has a lot to say, and we're very grateful to her. We are immensely grateful to you. We're going to hear more from Belle tonight as we move into our main event, our main course. Respectability politics has a bad name today. How you conduct yourself, how you carry yourself, how you allow yourself to be perceived has a bad name today. How you allow your community to be perceived has a bad name today. We view it as almost justifying some of the ills that are waged against us. Chris Rock used to have this old sketch about N-words and black people. It was very classist in retrospect, because it almost justified that there was a subset of black people who were almost deserving of the subjugation they were facing due to the fact that they would not carry themselves in a respectable manner. Respectability politics, however, has a long history. If I said the name Rosa Parks, how many of you would know that name? All of you. If I said the name Claudette Colvin, how many of you would know that name? The revolutionary behind me. And my revolutionary brother Albie over here too, of course, absolutely adore. You said, and Michael, of course, no. Claudette Colvin. Rosa Parks is, of course, famous for refusing to move to the back of the bus and taking one of the first psychological blows against Jim Crowism, against white supremacy in the Deep South. But she wasn't the first. Claudette Colvin is widely credited as being the first. But Claudette Colvin, as I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, everybody put their hands up, as I understand it, was a teenage mum. And she was dark-skinned. And amongst many other different reasons, though, she wasn't the figure of respectability, of marketability for a cause that Rosa Parks was. Chris Kaba was born in 1999. He, till this day, is a baby. Like, he's young enough to be my son, quite comfortably. Quite comfortably to be my son. Quite comfortably, actually. And I'm not even that old. But he could have been my son. Chris Kaba was killed by a police officer. It, of course, rightfully led to a reaction from the community. The people who stand for justice took a stand. We have to respect that, and we love that. We appreciate that, because Chris Kaba didn't know he would be Chris Kaba. George Floyd didn't know he would be George Floyd. And God forbid the thought, Nels Abbey would never know that thing. I'm not going to say bad things about himself. And same thing about anybody could become a hashtag tomorrow. But no one knows it. The police officer went to court. The police officer was acquitted of murder. Actually getting to court was actually quite a shock to me, truth be told. He's acquitted of murder. Then came what I consider to be the mother of all propaganda. The police played the system, I don't know if it's the police or the court, they played a blinder. So everybody was allowed to go out and protest and do everything else. Then came the big revelation the day after the night before, which was that Chris Kaba was somebody who we would not, by any means, could mistake for Rosa Parks. Chris Kaba was a very, very serious criminal, essentially. So Chris Kaba was, as they like to say, was on road. He was in the streets. He was the streets, for real. And he was even rapping about it, too. Chris Kaba was effectively, possibly, the most difficult person to advocate for ever in British history I can think of. Because they had him in 4K and everything else or so there was no denying it, we had to look at it. But I used to have this teacher back in my school in Nigeria, a brutal guy, and probably should be on crime, probably should be on trial for child abuse, so not sexual child abuse, but he was flagrant with the cane. His name was Mr. Dixon. And he always used to say to us, Nelson Abbey, that's my, give away my full name, so which you guys always knew. He was saying, actually, he didn't call me Nelson, he couldn't pronounce it, he used to call me Lesson. Like, Lesson Abbey, your principles only mean something if you stand by it when it is not convenient to do so. But it begs the question, my principles are one thing. Who gives a damn about my principles? We're looking at the community. This is the story of us as a people. And it begs the question tonight, the Chris Kaba situation begs a serious question. Do we advocate for black people in particular, who are always at the marginal, at the sharp end of the razor blade of society? Do we advocate for black people who have been harmed by the system, particularly by the police, no matter what they may have done? Or, by virtue of realpolitik, I think that's the right pronunciation, realpolitik, do we have to be selective? I repeat, do we advocate for people, for black people, no matter what they may have done, or do we have to be selective by virtue of the fact that the situation we find ourselves in forces us to be somewhat selective? Can we afford to advocate for a Chris Kaba? Or do we have to be selective and recognize that maybe sometimes some people we're going to have to charge into the game? Harsh stuff we're going to go through tonight. And it's a question that Martin Luther King, who we now all consider a saint today, that they had to ponder back in the 60s. That yet they could have rode with Claudette Colvin. Possibly to damage the movement. Hate to say it. It's easy to say this with benefit of hindsight right now, that they should have stood by their principle. But the fact that they didn't stand by their principle got us to where we are today, in part. It was a blow against white supremacy they couldn't deny. Colorism, respectability, and everything else. So it brings us to here tonight. Can we afford our principles, our anti-racist principles? Or are we essentially forced to be selective at times? To pick and choose, to pick and mix, to sometimes have to turn a wicked blind eye for the purpose of the greater good. To discuss this evening, we have assembled a crew of absolutely brilliant thinkers, brilliant speakers, brilliant orators, and brilliant people who really contribute to society, people who have real lived experience. We're going to hear from all 5 of them. One of them, Stafford Scott, I'm afraid couldn't join us tonight because Stafford's been, again, advocating for black people who found themselves in hardship. So it brings us here tonight. The question is very simple. Very simple. Do we advocate for black people who've been harmed by the system or anybody, no matter who they may be, warts and all, or do we have to be selective for the greater good of the movement towards black equality? You will hear from the 5 speakers. They will all have 4 minutes each to make an opening statement. We're going to be a little bit more strict with time, so when you hear the bell, everybody, that means that your time's up. And then we'll have a broad discussion amongst ourselves, and then we'll have a vote. How does that sound? And if you have something to say, there's 3 magical words that we say in this room, which are? Energy, which are? Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters of all genders and none, please welcome our first speaker. None other, a man who many of us would consider to be synonymous. Why does he actually know it's him? A man who is considered to be synonymous with Brexit. The thorn in Nigel Farage's side. One of the founders of an organisation called OFOC. Please welcome our little brother, the indefatigable Femi Oluwole. Please welcome. Who are you swearing in with?
I thought you had something.
No. You want to swear in with? Okay, fair enough. So we're swearing in with So please hold it in the air. So put it on you. So please, you can hold it there. Put your hand on it. So, feminine lady, you promise to swear. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, the black truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you.
God, I do. Oh, sorry, don't have it.
The next 4 minutes are yours. Thank you.
Can I do this? Oh. Okay, so I've only got 4 minutes, so I'm going to try and make sure I stick to topic. Israel-Palestine. That used to be a thing that we also thought was so complicated that nobody understood it. But I'm now going to use it as an analogy that we all understand to explain the situation with Chris Kaba. Because we all understand that it makes sense to condemn the attacks and the targeting of civilians in Israel by Hamas. As we also understand that it makes sense to point out that Hamas is a symptom of decades of oppression. Decades of oppression that is still taking lives every single day. And it actually strengthens our argument. It gives us credibility that we point out that Hamas is in the wrong to target civilians. Because then we can establish the principle and be consistent across the board that we don't like people being killed, that we don't want people to die. And because then we can move on to the principle that if we know that, the question is, if we want to solve the problem, we have to end the oppression. If we recognize the root cause of the oppression, of the problem, which is the oppression. Because oppression breeds extremism. And is poverty not a form of oppression? Is racism not a form of oppression? Hell, even the Tory government that the United Nations says was deliberately trying to normalize white supremacy, they said in their beating crime plan, they acknowledged the link between poverty, a lack of opportunity to escape poverty via a job, and turning to crime. In their race report, yes, that race report, they acknowledge that if you have a black-sounding name, you have to send 80% more job applications to get a job. Which means that it is harder to get out of poverty for black people. They also, in the government statistics, it says that black households are the most likely of any race to be in poverty. So, when I say that oppression breeds extremism, even the Tories understand that. Because what is crime, in the most part, if not an extreme reaction to the oppression of poverty? So stories like Chris Kaba, they should be part of our argument in terms of combating racism, because stories like Chris Kaba are a symptom of that problem. Because we don't want people to die. People dying on British streets is a problem that we should all be against solving, whether that is by cop or by gang. Whether it's by the Met Police or by a gang, and I know that that's kind of redundant to say Met Police versus gang, but the media wants us to have the conversation about whether or not Chris Kaba was a good guy, whether or not we should be supporting Chris Kaba. This isn't about supporting Chris Kaba. This is about the question of, did racism play a part in this? That's what we, as anti-racism activists, should be talking about. And unless you can be 100% sure and swear on your heart that you know that if Chris Kaba, if it wasn't for the systemic racism, that means that somebody with a name like Chris Kaba has to send 80% more applications in order to get a job, in order to earn a decent living, that he would still have turned to a life of crime? Unless you know, hand on heart, that if it wasn't for the systemic racism that was identified within the Metropolitan Police, and the fact that they are 4 times more likely to use violence against a black suspect, that they would definitely have still pulled that trigger, then you know that racism played a part in how we got here in the first place. So in terms of Chris Kaba, we shouldn't leave him out of the story in terms of combating racism, because he is a symptom of it. He is he's the bloody tip of the spear. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Round of applause for Kemi, everybody. Thank you. Thank you so much, Kemi. That was amazing of you. Much appreciated. Up next, we are going to invite somebody, again, somebody who has lived experience in this space, somebody who's quite special to us. He's smiling at me right now. I think his heart's a bit nervous. He's a man, I'll describe him as a man who's swift on his feet. A man who's come here tonight to share his intellect with us and his experiences. I'm just going to make clear, at the halfway mark, the 2-minute mark, we'll ring the bell to let you know at the halfway mark or so. just for the speakers. But please, actually, I just want to tell a quick story. This gentleman is probably one of the most famous stop and search people who stopped and searched in Britain today or so. Who was he's actually an Olympic athlete, and he was stopped on the street I grew up on, Land Hill Road in Maida Vale. Please put your hands and your hearts together. I know he's struggling with this. Ricardo dos Santos, please, Ricardo, please. Round on your feet for our Olympians. Round of applause for our Olympian ladies. Thank you so much. Thank you, Ricardo. Thank you. Thank you so much. Ricardo, what are you swearing in? What book are you swearing in with? We'll go with the biography of Liv and Christie. Alright, so Ricardo, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, the black truth, and nothing but the black truth, so help you the biography of Liv and Christie assuming it exists?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, thank you very much. The next 4 minutes are yours. We'll let you know when you're halfway through them. Thank you.
I didn't plan to speak at all, but here we are. I'm going to talk from my personal experiences with the men I've dealt with them since I was about 10. Knowing the situation and how they treated me, even though I've not done anything, I have no criminal history, no problems with, well, no personal problems.
Can you speak into the microphone a bit?
Can you pick up, please? Sorry, thank you. Does that count my time?
No, no.
Sorry. Yeah, so I'm going to go off on some of my dealings with them. So the one that everybody knows is the one from 2020. We have, well, 9 with them, but you guys probably know about 6. Yeah. The one in 2020, I got pulled over outside my house. They said I smelled cannabis. Well, yeah, I smelled cannabis. They smelled cannabis in my car. I'm a professional athlete. I've never smoked in my life. I've never drank alcohol, let alone, I'm touching 30. I've never done anything. But for them to stop me and to say that they smoked cannabis on myself and my partner was a slap in the face, to say the least. They didn't know who I was at the time. They then took me, they then found out who we were and changed the story because they knew that the cannabis system wouldn't stick. So they then said that I was driving erratically on the wrong side of the road and I was speeding. Till this day, I've never had any points, I've never had any fines, and I've had any issues. They took that to court and that didn't go. Fast forward 2 years, I then changed cars and I was driving home at 4:30 in the morning in a Tesla, and a marked police car was behind me. They looked into my car, they saw me, I was alone, and they decided to try to pull me over. When they did pull me over, they came out of the car with 9 armed officers, jumped out the car, and first thing they said was, "We saw you on your phone." For me, it's a bit strange because armed officers only stop on information. They don't do random stop and searches. Because I knew the law, I know what to say, they don't like it. And I have the ability to call my lawyer. I called my lawyer and told them I'm being stopped, and obviously the system changed. They then kind of changed the tone a bit, but it was more of a thing that they didn't know who I was. And hadn't I had the cameras, but as a Tesla comes with 9 built-in cameras, hadn't I had the cameras in the car, the situation could have been different. Even so that when I did inform them, 2 officers that came in later grabbed me, pinned me up to the car, and their colleague then came and said, "Listen, there's a camera in the car." And when they did point to the camera, I got video evidence of that, the officer said, "Let's go with me." Let's go, steps back and says, "You deal with him." And again, if I didn't have the camera, what would have been the ending? And I did go on and say, I went to Channel 4 on ITV, and I did say to them that within a matter of time, these guys come out with so much anger and so much aggression when they deal with young black people that something is going to happen. I honestly, when I say something is going to happen, I thought it would be years down the line. I didn't assume it would be 2 weeks later. 2 weeks later, I got a phone call from my lawyer and said, "Listen, something happened in Southwest London, and they're going to want you. Eventually someone's going to want to speak to you." But I was so confused because I was like, police officer shooting in London, it's not something that happens as often. And then I found out it was the armed unit, the same armed unit from the officer that stopped me. It was like Okay, I mean, it doesn't make sense. No matter the history of, again, no matter the history of Chris, we live in a society that we don't kill first and then ask questions. It's ask questions, and then if the person is guilty, penalize them. We don't, we're not in America where shoot first, question later. And it's a bit crazy with everything, because I understand that a lot of people are saying, oh, because he has the history, he did this, he did the whatever. I'm more first-hand with this same thing happened to me, with people saying to me, why didn't you just pull over? When videos came out, black people, white people, Asian people, the first thing was, why didn't you stop? And even the barrister who was against me said, why didn't you just stop? If a police car behind you, why didn't you just stop? But as a young black person living in London, you can't just stop. Legally, you stop when it's safe to do so. You are scared, you shake, your knees start rattling, you start sweating, you start feeling these emotions, these adrenalines that many people have never felt. So you can't just say, oh, I'm just going to pull over. Whether you've done something wrong, whether you know you've not done anything wrong. I personally have never done anything wrong, but it still scares the living life out of me when a police officer is behind me and turns their sirens on. And it's a feeling that, again, not many people have felt, and it's hard to explain if you've not felt it. So I do understand in that aspect what was probably going through Chris's mind at the time. It's the fight or flight system, and which I felt again in 2020. I had a 3-month-old baby in the car, and my first priority was making sure that we get home, so that if anything was to happen, I have my neighbours around, and Bianca and my son can go home, or they can deal with me. Whatever they do to me, I can deal with it, but I couldn't deal with the fact that my child gets hurt, or my other half gets hurt. So those are the things that just run through your mind in milliseconds that the general public doesn't understand. All they see is the end result, and they go on their podcast and tweet about what happened when, person who've experienced it firsthand, who've seen the anger in their eyes, and being able to remember one of the officer's eyes 6 months later, whilst he was wearing a mask. I encountered that same officer that was in my face 6 months later, but this time he had the face mask on, and the first thing I said was, I know those eyes. That's the eyes of anger, the eyes that I remember till this day. I know what it looks like. And for him to then realize who I was, and stayed in his car because he knew he didn't want the same problem that happened 6 months prior, is the understanding that these guys are just here to work. They don't care about the trauma that they leave with you. They don't care that the individuals get left with PTSD. Unfortunately, Bianca has been diagnosed with PTSD because of the back of this incident. These are little things that we now have to take on. So again, going back to the main point, it's more of it's the understanding of whatever happened in the past doesn't dictate and doesn't. You can't shoot. Shooting is for me personally, it's one of its last resort, and if that person is armed. And what's that? 4 or 2? You're gonna go 4?
Yeah, sorry. Keep going. Keep going.
No, I'm good. I want to sit down.
No, bro, keep going. Don't worry.
But yeah, sorry. Cut this short. I just want to say that we've been dealing with this issue for many years. It's 4 years that personally myself and Bianca's been fighting this, and it's not over yet, unfortunately. We were told 3 months. My son now started reception in September, and by the looks of it, he'll probably finish primary school by the time all of this is done. But it's a fight that we took on, and being here, it's a choice. Unfortunately, Bianca stepped out of the limelight. She personally couldn't deal with it, couldn't deal with the trolls, couldn't deal with being called the N-word, her Twitter being bombarded with messages, people telling her she could never represent her country yet she won the silver medal in the Paris Olympics just recently. That for us was the biggest middle finger to everyone who said that she can't represent the country. Last year she also won a bronze medal in the World Championships, and it's that fight that we've had, and a lot of people have experienced, but not a lot of people had a platform to speak on it. And it's taken a lot of toll on us, Bianca's especially, but as a family, as a unit, we've decided, somebody has to do it, and that somebody is us. We've taken it on, and if it takes another 10 years, we'll be here, we're fighting, and we'll be supporting the other young people that pass through and giving the best knowledge, the best support, financially, whatever that we can do, and to help.
Ricardo dos Santos, everybody. Round of applause. I must say, Ricardo doesn't gain anything for coming here tonight. He actually came and spoke from the heart and told his story to all of us. And it's something that we are with you, trust me. We'll ride with you. We're here for this ride. You're not by yourself. You're Bianca, you're not by yourself. We are with you, trust me, throughout this whole thing. So please, anything you can do like that. You got our details, you got my number, you got all of our numbers. Thank you so much. Up next, we've heard her voice earlier on today. We've heard her daughter's talent too. So we are now coming to hear. We've heard the quiet storm of this earlier on today. Now we're going to hear the loud storm also. So please welcome our dear sister, poet, activist, revolutionary, and absolute inspiration to so many, voice for the voiceless. Please welcome Vian Imma. Vian Imma, I beg your pardon. Vian Imma, sorry, thank you. So Vian, please, we swear you in. And who are we swearing in? Oh, okay. By bell hooks. Okay, so our sister's making a statement. Right. So, Vian Imma, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and the black truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you?
Bell hooks.
Okay, please. The next 4 minutes are yours. Halfway through, we'll bring a bell will go off, please.
Thank you. I have to read off the paper. Okay. Black lives matter until you find out they're a criminal. Black lives matter until you find out they're a recovering addict. Black lives matter until you find out they have multiple baby mothers. Black lives matter until you find out they're unemployed. But black people should be afforded the same dignity, humanity and grace as white people just because. There should be no perfection required to receive what white people get by default, even the most depraved among them. But we don't seem to like the black lives that make us look bad. Those who make our ability to exist in a white man's world that little bit harder, because these anti-black streets ain't easy on the black body. So damn the ones that intensify the heat under our feet. Now we are each allowed our own opinion, but respectability politics, a term coined by Evelyn Brooks in 1993, is a tool of white supremacy. It is racist. Why should a black person believe that by changing themselves they will be protected from systemic injustices? Expecting our community to live lives where we can never be expecting our communities where we can never fall short or be less than ourselves is humane. It is not freedom. Why can't we make mistakes? Why can't we take wrong paths before we fix ourselves up? Especially as the most undervalued and oppressed of all. Especially with generational trauma bubbling deep in ourselves. Especially with our collective depression and anxieties and illnesses all born from fighting for equality and having the audacity to survive. How are we to live in societies that are ready and waiting to tell us our value and worth is measured not by our humanness, but by how much we please our oppressor? We can look also at the model minority myth, which is just that, a myth, and another tool of white supremacy. The respectability used to divide and suppress, causing harm to all marginalised groups by uplifting one group over the other, giving them acceptance from white majority society.
Not because they have integrity or kind or community focus, but simply because they are successful academically and economically, which is a win for deniers of systemic racism as it attempts to rid them of being the instigators of oppression and instead blames those caught in its tight, unrelenting grip. Black people, though we may scoff at being touted against the model minorities because we know what we're going through and how suffocating it can be in this anti-black world, isn't it not far from those desiring to be good blacks? The well-spoken Trevor McDonald black, the black footballers when they don't miss penalties black, Ainsley Harriet safe to introduce to your granny black. Can you not see the harm, the elitism, and dare I say the stushness of it all? Black people are worthy of advocacy no matter how we talk, walk, how educated we are, and what our postcode is. If Lucy Letby could be called an English rose in the UK mainstream media after being convicted of murdering multiple newborn babies, then I beg, let black people live and breathe. Because I honestly believe that if a white woman had been driving that black Audi, even if she was a known criminal, no bullet would have entered her forehead. It was the image of that scary black man behind that wheel that gave rise to the exaggerated and dramatic response by Martin Blake towards Chris Kaba. And those were the prosecution's words, not mine. The IOPC Sound Nassim also stated that Mr. Blake used unreasonable force. Chris was a criminal, but he did not deserve to be killed. So if the system is already doing the most and working by design against us, why are we with ease and with no benefit to us as a community doing its work? Our anti-racist and pro-human rights principles cannot coexist with respectability. Thank you.
The lady is something special. Something special. You really are, Leanne. You really are. Thank you so much for blessing us with your presence tonight. Really grateful to you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Really grateful. Another legend, we're going to call him to the ground. He's somebody who, if you are on Twitter, he's one of these what I call a general of black Twitter. That he's one of these people who consistently, no matter where the racism may be coming from or so, there's always somebody who I know is going to be there riding against it, no matter the weather. He's somebody who convenes conversations at absolutely vital times, but he's also a voice of absolute wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. He's swiftly, I wouldn't call him an elder just yet, because I want to put an age on my brother, because he hasn't got the grey hair just yet, so I don't know how old he is. But I'd say somebody is a voice that I appreciate and learn so much from. Please welcome Michael Morgan. So, thank you, Neil. Thank you. So, Michael, who are you swearing in with?
Kelechi Okafor.
Ah, Kelechi Okafor. Absolutely. Oh, brilliant, brilliant. Another brilliant sister. Here we go. Thank you. So, Edge of Here by Kelechi Okafor. Brilliant. Fantastic. So, let's swear you in, Michael. Michael Morgan, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, the black truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you?
Kelechi Okafor.
Thank you. The next 4 minutes of you'll be given a halfway rebuttal. Thank you.
Now, when Chris Kaba was killed in 2022, the first thing that I did was to reach out to the family. I was lucky enough to speak with, quite extensively, Jefferson. Jefferson, as many of you may know, is Chris Kaba's cousin. So, it was quickly established in that conversation, in a series of conversations, that Chris Kaba was no angel. But that doesn't make the Met Police God. I've heard it said once today, and once only, the name of the officer who shot and killed Chris Kaba. Can anybody tell me the name of that officer? I said, can anybody tell me the name of that officer? Martin Blake killed Chris Kaba. Now, unfortunately for us, Martin Blake was not on trial. I say again, unfortunately for us, Martin Blake was not on trial. his genuinely held belief of fear was on trial. Unfortunately for us, this is a pattern in terms of the genuinely held belief being on trial and not the individual. Unfortunately for us, it's harder to prove a genuinely held belief is guilty. These people, the Met Police, their comms team, their legal backers, they know this. We've been here before with the police, where the genuinely held belief is on trial. Genuinely held belief is undefeated in court. Now, the way I look at it is this. His genuinely held belief being on trial is a problem for us. And I'll say this, unfortunately, very confidently, I think we're going to be witnessing this in the next 5 years. A police officer's genuinely held belief being on trial, I say again, it's undefeated. Because black men are 3 times more likely to be killed when interacting with police. Particularly the Met Police, who are institutionally racist and currently still in special measures. I just want to end with this. Stormzy said it at one of the rallies which was held for Chris Kaba. We need to have stamina. We need to be in this for the long run because we're going to be here again. The genuinely held belief of a police officer will be on trial. Now, I'll just close with this. The genuinely held belief of a police officer does wear us down. I've seen so many, especially online, activists saying they are worn out, saying they have had enough, saying they are exhausted. Now, let's just remember that this is a marathon and not a sprint, because we will be here again. And to look after our activists, because you'll notice that Stafford Scott isn't here today. For the last 6 months, I've been filming with Stafford. And today, we wrapped our latest project. He is knackered. He is tired. He is worn down. He sat in that courtroom listening to a police officer's genuinely held belief. So whilst our activists are there for us, support them when they are temporarily not. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael Morgan, everybody. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And before we go into our final person, I'm going to declare myself a bit of a hypocrite here. Because as much as I don't believe in respectability politics or anything else, I went to, remember the coconut trial, Maria Hussein, we mentioned it earlier on today. So I was there pretty much throughout the whole thing. From the beginning of the trial, we were there. Regular Uppity people would know Maria Hussein was our girl. She's one of us, so she's only not here today because she just recently became a mum. But I went to the coconut trial from every single aspect of the trial. And then, so I'm not a trained lawyer, I have no legal training whatsoever, I come from a financial services background and media background, so that's me. But what was interesting is that I do know how optics work. And those optics, another name for them is respectability. And I don't also believe that we want that our respectability, our principles must coexist with respectability in order for black equality to prevail. I would like to think I don't believe it. But during the actual coconut trials, one point where I walked inside into the court, myself and my brother Simeon Brown was there too, who's from Channel 4 News, he was also there. Actually, myself and the profoundly brilliant journalist Simeon Brown, so we'll see. Is my microphone working here? It's just my audio, thank you. But there's one moment where I walked inside the court and you had the gallery of people just sat there watching. That's where all of us, where Maria's family, the journalists, everybody was sat down. And it was intense, because you can actually see Maria's mum was praying throughout the whole thing. We were super nervous. On day one, we thought the trial was going to get thrown out. And the judge kept us pretty much sitting on the edges of our seats at the edge. We were just waiting for her to say, there's no case to answer here. And then she came in and said, there is a case to answer. And I'm telling you, it was like so deflating. It was so deflating. Then we got to day 2, and she actually got the actual acquittal. There was just outbursts, screams of joy in the court. So I was screaming, I was crying in court, I'm not going to lie about it. But what was interesting, on day 1, when we walked in, all of us walked inside the court, and sat right there was the one person you would not want in a courtroom advocating for you. You would not want this person, you would not want a judge or a jury, but thank God there's no jury this time around. But you would not want this, you would not want to lift your head up and see that person in the gallery hoping that you're doing well. That person was a gentleman called Piers Corbyn. Arch conspiracy theorist, kook of every single caliber you can think of. And he was sat right there. And immediately I thought to myself, anybody who looks up and sees him sat there are going to know that, okay, it creates a bit of a perception on the actual defendants. Oh, am I wrong, Dilly? Am I wrong to say so? I mean, because you're the legal here. So I actually then thought to myself, I can't let it happen. So I approached him and I asked if he would actually mind vacating the court. And he was really good. And then there was unique stubbornness. So Al Jazeera reporter was there, and there was one point where he then came back to the court, and there was just one seat left. And it was either he was going to take it, or the Al Jazeera reporter was going to take it. And of course, this is Piers Corbyn. He has no sense of self. So he took the seat. And the Al Jazeera journalist, who was vital to actually get coverage for the case or so, she had to walk out and she couldn't actually witness the case. But it speaks to, once again, that as much as I would love to say, as much as I say it flows off my tongue, that respectability politics and principles should not coexist, should not have to coexist when the going gets tough, when the stakes are high, when the white judge is looking you square in the eye, or the jury is looking in the eye or so, and you know that this person who is innocent is potentially going to get a criminal record or a custodial sentence. In those sorts of moments, you're then faced to make decisions that places you under a lot more pressure than you would be under normal circumstances. Principles, as my cane happy teacher used to say in Nigeria, only mean something if you stand by them when it's not convenient to do so. And I must be clear, my principles regularly get tested, and many, many times I am left wanting. And I would be a hypocrite to say otherwise. Just something we should bear in mind. So our final speaker on this, before we go into the generalist debate and general discussion on it, before we launch into the point of blackness, is once again our sister, a dear friend of mine, somebody who I can say, who whenever I come calling or so, she always has an ear for me. She's always like, yeah, what is it now, Del? So say again, who are you in trouble with now? Please welcome the newly minted MP for Clapham and, is it Clapham and Brixton North? Oh, Clapham and Brixton Hill, so you're moving up into gentrified people or so. Okay, so yeah, absolutely. The newly minted gentrifying MP of Clapham and Brixton Hill, Belle Riviera Addy. Thank you very much, Belle. So you've sworn in before, but do you have a second book you want to be sworn in, or are you sticking with Diane? Are you staying
I'll
with
stick with Diane.
Okay, well, so you're sworn in, so please, welcome to that. You have 4 minutes and they'll let you know on the halfway point. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think it's helpful just to go over some of the things that I've experienced since I became a Member of Parliament, just to understand what I was doing the evening that Chris Kaba was actually murdered. My first 3 months of being an MP, a terrorist attack took place in my constituency. It was a young man who had been released. He was being followed by the police at the time. Just before he left prison, he said that he wanted to do something big like kill an MP. There are 2 Bell hostels in Lambeth, and they put him in the one around the corner from my house. He was caught and shot in the street, having first stabbed 2 people. Sarah Everard, the following year, was murdered, and then by a police officer, and then an incident took place in Clapham Common when there was a vigil for her, and we saw awful images of police officers manhandling her. Manhandling various women who had attended the protest and vigil, sorry. The following year, Chris Kaba was shot by police officer and killed. And the year after that, an acid attack took place with a young mother and her children being affected. Now, that doesn't mean that my area is a dangerous area. These things have unfortunately happened in other parts of the country and in other MPs' constituencies. But unfortunately, all of these managed to grab a lot of attention. So that evening that Chris Kaba was shot, I was lying in bed. And it may have been about 11:30. I'd fallen going to sleep late, and I heard the helicopters over, because it was a few roads from my house. Heard the helicopters and thought to myself, something has gone down. I need to think to myself, tomorrow morning, I'm going to get a call from the borough commander, and he's going to tell me what's happened. I hope no one's hurt. I hope nothing too bad has happened. Went to sleep, fully prepared to wake up in the morning. Went to sleep, got ready. And waited for that call, which undoubtedly came. And unfortunately, I'd heard that a young black man had been shot. Now, the borough commander, understanding what the situation was very clear to lay out to me, lay out the fact that he was unarmed, because he knew what the questions would be. And I waited. I waited for the meeting that we undoubtedly have when things like this happen. And I went down there. But before I managed to get down there, I saw a load of coverage that had already come out about Chris Kaba, bearing in mind that his parents had been informed that he had been shot after me. And they had already found this information, it was already circulating. And I went to speak to the press, and I think it was important to make certain points. Make the points that it's something that had to be investigated, make the points that it's something that we had to look into, and also make the point that actually you can't pass judgment on somebody just in the same way you can't necessarily pass judgment on the officer. That was one of the points that was being made. You can't pass judgment on somebody who actually could not defend themselves. So was Chris Kaba difficult to advocate for, or his family? No. I have been criticised repeatedly for doing so, for expressing the pain in my community, an area which has the lowest trust and confidence in policing across London. It is an area where we have seen a lot of animosity between the police and the community, and young black people in particular feeling like they're being over-policed as citizens. Now, today I started off my day at Brixton Prison with the Justice Select Committee, but then afterwards I actually went to a meeting of EU nationals, and someone actually got up in the audience and actually talked about, because we were talking about how much EU nationals contribute to society, and she said, why do we have to be seen as contributing to society? Isn't it enough that we are human beings? Why does it always have to be couched in that way that, you do this so you deserve that, or you do this so you deserve that? Are we not going to be seen as, should we not be seen as equals? That was her general point. And I say this because it's very clear, and for those of us that do acknowledge that institutional racism exists, that we're not all treated as equals. I think about Lavinia Woodward, a medical student and an aspiring surgeon who attacked her ex-boyfriend, stabbed him in the leg with a knife, as well as a glass, a jam jar and a laptop, in a drug-fueled rage at her university accommodation, Oxford University. But the judge said a jail sentence was too severe for her because she was very clever, and she was an able young lady. You already heard about Lucy Letby, the English Rose, and we all know exactly what she did. And something that a lot of people don't know is that British Sugar, a company in this country, has the legal right to grow cannabis. They have something like 40 football pitches worth of medical marijuana growing in Norfolk, and they are able to sell it with a special license from the Home Office. Just one company, making loads and loads of money. So we take all of that into account, and the amount of stop and search we see from black communities, you know, the stops and search we've heard about today, and we look at what happened to, excuse me, Child Q. Look what happened to Child Q. We have legally that large amount of cannabis grown, which somebody is able to sell legally, but yet it was found at some point that you could search a young girl's underwear to find I don't know how much cannabis. Now, there's no difference in drug taking in different communities in this country. There's no difference between white and black people, for example. But it's so important that we point out these differences because we need to understand how different people are seen in terms of the criminal justice system and how that actually plays out. Now, does it matter, again, who Chris Kaba was and what he may not have done? And again, I point out the fact that he is not here to defend himself. And you know what, quite frankly, perhaps he did do those things. But as his dad, Prosper Kaba, said, if he's done anything wrong, lock him up. And that was the view of my community, and it's important to express the views of my community. I've been challenged across the House, and when you hear it, I mean, because I may be speaking to the converted, when you hear what I was challenged for, somebody said, another member across the other side of the House, when the Home Secretary put a statement about this, said, isn't it absolutely awful that a member of this House would have referred to this young thug or man, and I'm paraphrasing, as a well-loved member of the community? I finished speaking, so I couldn't speak. All I could do is shout at him, as you often hear us doing in the House of Commons, say, you don't live in my community. The man in my community loved Chris Kaba in the same way that people in East London love the Cray twins. But they're one group of people they're allowed to cherish and even idolise in some way. I'm not saying it's right that our young people may speak in the way they do or idolise a certain lifestyle, but I want to point out the differences in how we treat people when they do. And even this whole idea of respectability, it was quite shocking, especially coming from a community that was hurting from it, to hear even black people engaged in these discussions. This false security that perhaps we have as British citizens and individuals, again, that idea that if we just do better, and if we just sound better, and if we just work better, and if we have a better degree, that people are going to treat us better. That's not necessarily the case. Listen, the amount of my crimes, and I think about, when I say crimes, yeah, my crimes, biggest crimes, probably stealing from the pick and mix in Brixton, Woolworths, which is now done. But even with that being the most outlandish crime I've ever committed, even with being an elected member of British Parliament, when I see a police officer, I stiffen up. I haven't done anything, but that's what I'm taught to do, or that's what I have been conditioned to do as a black woman. Now, I'm really clear what institutional racism means for our society, and I'm very clear that I may hold the position I have, I may have the education that I have, but when you see me walking down the street, I am another black woman, and we are not free until we are all free. So I'm not advocating for any crime any individual may or may have not committed, including Chris Kaba, but the point I want to make is that no one is God, and we do not have the death penalty in this country. And it is right that despite the difficult job that police may have to do at some point in time, that they are investigated when somebody is killed in it. It's right. And I worry that too much at this point in time, people have questioned whether or not it should be investigated. So no matter what you did or who you are or where you are from, my view is that if you are my constituent or if you are killed in my area, I will represent you because that is exactly what I was elected to do. And no human being is better or worse than anybody. No human being deserves to die in a certain way. And if we can avoid that, we must absolutely do so. And that is not necessarily the case with Chris Kaba. We respect the outcome, or I have to respect the outcome of the case, but my community is hurting, and I completely understand why. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Belle. Thank you. Thank you. We've heard from all of our speakers, and it's now time to hear from you all. So if there's any points of blackness or anybody wishes to make any points or so, we have, the time really does fly by really quickly, so please do not hold back. Rise to your feet, make a point of blackness, microphones are going around, let's get it. There's a hand in the back over there, please.
Where the blackness.
Please.
I think that there's been some conflation with marketing and respectability politics. Because in the movement, so for example with Claudette Colvin, as much as it feels icky, you're marketing a movement, you're choosing a person who you think will be well perceived, and that's standard across all walks of life for all races. And then there is respectability politics, where we think that we could be protected just by actually following a model that has been set for us by white people, and basically we're hoping that through that model we'll be able to survive and stay alive, as well as progress and work. So that's two different things, I think, because I think, like, you know, like we're talking, I think the other example you gave with Piers Corbyn in the court, him being there from a marketing and branding and, you know, association perspective, it doesn't look, you could see that, you know, like you want to control the optics.
Can I challenge you?
Okay.
Respectability and marketing, are they as different as you suspect they are?
Yes,
so
I
for
think
example,
so.
I'll give you an example. It's not the best example anymore. There's a reason why Diddy appeared in a lot of adverts and ODB didn't.
Okay.
There's a reason why, because you did not want your brand next to Old Dirty Bastard. But you did
But
want
that's
it next to
yeah, but that's marketing.
That's marketing, but there's an element of respectability.
Oh, yes.
He was more polished, he was easier on the eye, easier to identify with, it was someone put you more at ease or so.
Yes, and I think that's true. I think that's true.
Yeah.
But that goes across the board with in any race in any spectrum when you're pushing a product.
Yeah.
Right? You want a face of that product that fits. Yeah. But then respectability politics, as I see it, is that you are the bar is whiteness. The bar is what white people think is okay, is acceptable. And you are supposed to work to that as a form of protection to make sure that you essentially stay alive. Do the right thing, say the right thing, follow the rules, wear a tie, and then you won't get stopped by the police and potentially you will still stay alive. And that to me is a different thing.
Thank you. Thank you. Sorry. I'm just going to give Femi a quick moment for a point of blackness to Femi, please.
Yeah, I'm going to touch on this in my closing, but just to really back up what you just said there. What's your name, sorry?
Sorry?
What's your name, sorry?
Susan.
Susan. What Susan said is entirely right. The difference we're talking about here is between what we as commentators and activists have to do in order to push the cause forward versus what every black person in the country should have to do in order to expect a decent quality of life. That's the distinction.
Thank you. Thank you, Femi. Sorry, Pete Herbert, please.
Hi, thank you. Point to African race. Just one point, G-Fish. One point. The system here obviously is racist.
Yeah.
So if you go into any court in this country and expect fairness or justice, you've got another thing coming. It's a game. There's only been one case in the last 37 years where a police officer was convicted of manslaughter. The judge on 2 separate occasions has allowed, in fact refused the prosecution to charge manslaughter instead of murder. It's a designer prosecution designed to fail. Remember Christopher Alder, 1998, charged with manslaughter in Hull before an all-white jury. The judge stopped the trial going to the jury. This is a part of a pattern. So for me, part of it comes back to us and our lack of powerfulness.
Can I challenge you for a second, please?
Just
point of blackness, challenge you.
Sure.
Had the officer been charged, had Martin Blake been charged with, say, manslaughter as opposed to murder, do you think that the baggage that came with young Chris Kaba, do you think that it still would have actually been baggage, or do you think it would have been a different situation altogether? By that, sorry, I haven't asked that question well. By that I mean this, is that the imagery of Chris Kaba, if it came out once the officer, let's say the imagery was in the public domain, do you think it would influence the officer's ability to be convicted if he was charged with manslaughter as opposed to murder?
I've sat on a jury, I've also been a judge with juries.
Yeah.
They compromised. There was no compromise there. They would take the easy way out, which is to say not guilty. I think it would have made a difference, you cannot guarantee it. There were black people on that jury as well. even if you had
black people are not a monolith.
Yeah,
to the big Kemi Badnock on that.
No, I'm saying,
But please go ahead.
yeah. I'm saying some of us are our own harshest critics. But the other question I'd say is, John Charles Menezes, there's legions of examples, but as a community, where were we? Because it's fine to sit in debate here and talk about this, but when push comes to shove, where were we when Stephen Lawrence was murdered? Where were we? The vast majority of us were partying. When Roland Adams was murdered, I was at Notting Hill Carnival for 2 whole days with his parents. Most people couldn't care less. So for us, it's a commentary, sometimes a reflection on our lack of powerlessness. If you have one member of the Jewish community who was shot in such circumstances, they will be out. Their government would be out. Our governments are silent. So get power. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just going to... Do you have a response to that, or do you have a point of blackness in general? I will come back to you in a second. There's a gentleman over here. Yeah.
Point of blackness.
East Africa in the house, that's what I'm talking about.
Yes. It's my first time here and I've absolutely loved this. I have to say thank you, Nels, for organising it. Thank you for the team. Onto my point. I agree with everyone, with all the speakers, that what the Met done was horrible. But one thing hasn't been mentioned, that we have failed Chris Kaba. The system, the government, us as a community. Because as a young black person, it's unfortunate that we have that. The only thing that we are seen to do or be is roadmen and criminals. And the fact that someone like Chris Kaba, who, what if he was not around disadvantaged youth, or he was in a better environment, would that have led to the same outcome for him? And I see someone like Bell, an amazing Labour MP, and I want you to ask the government that is in power right now to please do more, because what I have seen so far is disappointment. We have a party that I think the government has been horrible to someone like Diane Abbott. And furthermore than that, has only been given us tokens. For example, the thing of changing Order of British Empire to Order of British Excellence. Like, the whole thing is rubbish. Who really cares? I want to see a change and stop it from this structural system that makes us feel less inside. I don't want to be seen as a criminal, hence why I've come in a beautiful white shirt and grey trousers. We're in a system that forces us to have that view, and maybe that's why Chris Kaba was in a situation he was in. I want us all to ask ourselves, could we have done more to stop these type of things from happening?
Are you suggesting that Chris was in a grey shirt and a white shirt and a white shirt and a grey pair of trousers or so with a lovely afro? Are you suggesting that Chris probably wouldn't have found himself in the situation he was in?
I mean, I think it's a bit more deeper than that.
So do I. Thank you. So please wrap up your point, please. I don't want
no, that's...
You finished?
Yeah.
Thank you so much, please, yes. We'll come to Albie, then we'll go to the side, then we'll go to Dilly, please.
Point of blackness.
Please.
I remember when I first heard the news about Chris Kaba, and I was hugely concerned about what might come. I actually got in touch with the Home Secretary at the time, Suella Braverman.
Jesus.
But I did. Did anyone else get in touch with her? I did, because I was worried.
I think it's necessary that everybody considers that a waste of time. But you're right, sorry.
I got in touch with the Home Secretary at the time because I was concerned about what the shooting of Chris Kaba would mean for the black British community. I don't know if anyone else in this room did that. I got in touch with them because I was very
Round of applause for Albie. That's the Thank you, Albie.
And then I was told, after I was in touch, that there was more to the story that I didn't know. And I was very concerned about what the response might be. I thought we might have a George Floyd moment in the United Kingdom, and it might erupt into those protests that we saw in the US and everything that came after that. There was some good that came from those protests, I think, and there was also some division that came from those protests. I was concerned about what might come next. And then more information about the story came out, and we found out more about the circumstances of his death. It's not as clear-cut as someone just being stopped wrongly, like our Olympian was, in the street, and then being shot.
Have your point
of blackness after I finish my point.
Please, go ahead, please.
I'll finish my point. Yes. My understanding of what happened is that the police officers in question were concerned for their lives because the car was being rammed into police cars. That is what I understand happened in that situation. Now, I completely understand the fears that young black men have about the police. I have those same fears. I simply do not think, unfortunately, Chris Kaba is the person we should be picking to lionise in this very particular instance. But not just because of his background, which the police officers didn't know at the time, but because of the circumstances of what happened on that awful night. And I think if we want to really see a sustained change in the way that the criminal justice system operates in this country and the way that policing operates in this country, we've got to be smarter about the way that we operate. And I'm afraid I'm not sure that lionising Chris Kaba is the smartest thing to do. And also I would just say we're having a whole debate about Chris Kaba. No one's talking about Sasha Johnson. Why do we talk about Chris Kaba, but we don't talk about Sasha Johnson? We don't talk about all the other black people who are killed, not by police, actually a lot of times by other black people. We don't get outraged. Hang on. We don't get outraged and host events about that, but we do get outraged and host events about this. And I just wonder why that is. And I think we need to be a bit smarter in how we operate if we want to see the change that I want to see and that all of you want to see.
Thank you. So, in short, we have to wait till Albie gets shot by the police.
I'm not going to get shot. Exactly.
I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't rule it out. Anyway, but hold on. We're going to come to. Sorry, because we've got everybody else spoken for. I'm just going to. We haven't heard from you, so we just thought let's. Because you're the brother in the suit too. You look like you know something. That means brother in the suit in the beard.
I'm on a suit because I attend the same event that MP was here with us attended. Before everything, my name is Miguel. I just arrived yesterday from Lisbon. And I'm going to fly in a couple of hours again back to Lisbon. And I just want to read these names for you.
Come on.
Yeah, I'm going to be very fast. Cuckoo, 14 years old. MC Snake, 30 years old. Musu, 15 years old. Tony, 24 years old. Teti, 16 years old. Angoy, 17 years old. PTV, 20 years old. Romão, 23 years old. João, 17 years old. Guto, 15 years old. Danny Joy, 22 years old. And 4 weeks ago, Odeir, 43 years old. You guys know what all of these names that I just read to you have in common? 2 things. All of them were black guys. And the second thing, all of the police officers that killed them, they were not prosecuted and they did not face jail time. I just want to tell you something. I've been listening. This is my first time here also. Thank you very much, all of you. I don't think that the best thing that we should do now is speak about black on black crime, because that is a distraction.
Yeah.
We need to focus. We know that our community has problems, but all of the communities has problems as well. We need to focus on who wants to kill us and to target our community, okay? And the only thing that I need to say is that please focus on the best thing for our community. Don't focus on the distractions that they want us to focus, okay? Thank you very much.
Hold on. I'm hearing a francophone accent. No.
Lisboa. I was born in Lisboa, but I'm from Cape Verde.
Oh, yeah, okay, there we go. Tierra in the house. No, that's not Tierra. That's Guadalupe. Sorry. Yeah, sorry.
Ronaldo.
No. What's the name? Amber Rose at the house. Well, I got there. There we go. Right. So, sorry. Probably did a good place. We are really pressed for time, so let's keep our comments short.
Let me just give some historical context to what we've discussed.
Swiftly.
Yeah, very swiftly. The Amritsar massacre. I think you're all of that. You must have heard of that. India. The fellow's name was General Michael Dyer. Slaughtered Indians, unarmed, men, women and children. They acquitted him. Frederick Lugard was guilty of massacre of indigenous people in Uganda, before he went to Nigeria, and a series of massacres. They conferred a lordship on him. I make this point because it's got nothing to do with the profile of Chris Kaba. Nothing to do with that at all. The Lugards and the Michael Dyers had crime sheets that were immeasurable, but they were acquitted by their justice system. The excuse that they gave them was that they feared because they were outnumbered. Chris Kaba was murdered in their country here. No question of being outnumbered. Nothing to do with his profile at all. It is about the skin color. It's as simple as that. It's about the skin color. Those ones were acquitted. The Odias and the Lugards were acquitted because it was a white man slaughtering people of color. Kaba was killed. His killer was acquitted because of the aristocracy of skin color.
Please.
Very quickly.
Yeah, please. And then we'll go to Simeon Brown over here. Yeah. So now we'll come in. Please, Messiah, please.
This is for the people who, I guess, self-identify or don't self-identify as the respectables. I think it's really important that we do not disassociate ourselves from the people that they demonize. I think they do this, they target them because they know there are people in society like ourselves who even involuntarily fit the profile of what is to be respectable. So what our job is to do is wherever we go, we speak on behalf of them. Not just because it's a black issue, but because, as we always say, no one gets left behind, right? So defending the likes of Chris Kaba isn't in his death alone. It's before he died, what were we doing in our communities? Are we not the ones who demonize the people that come from the ends too? It's easy to outreach with people who you feel like are going to be A-star students and get into Oxford and Cambridge. But what about those who will never access those institutions or those levels of accolades? What have we done to them? So inadvertently, we create the vulnerabilities of Chris Kaba that they can target. The reason why they put the media out after the case is because it's not just white people that they care about, it's us online, who we knew we will try to separate ourselves. Because we know when we go to work, when we're with our friends, when we're with our people, we would like to say not all of us are like Chris Kaba. And if all of us are like Chris Kaba, and so what are we saying? Yeah. So for me, as someone else said, white people are going to do what they're going to do. The institutes are going to do what they want to do. But the real question is, how comes those of us who are respectable feel so disgusted to be associated with those people who are Chris Kaba?
Messiah, point of blackness, let me challenge you briefly. Black people with a bit of age on you. Black and brown people with a bit of age on you. Some hideous crime is announced on the news. Back in the day, we'd all be saying one thing at the back of our mind. What's that thing? We pray the person is not black.
Yeah.
Because that respectable, yeah. That respectability, it's inherent in all of us because we know that how that looks has a reflection upon us too.
Exactly. So
and the communal image, please.
100%. So that's understanding how to navigate society, right? Yeah. And that makes sense. You can't go without that. But the point is, it's like when you say it's natural to us or whatever, that's like a primitive instinct. Yeah. And we are human beings because we can elevate ourselves above primitive instincts. So the idea is that whilst the Chris Kaba situations are not happening, what are we doing to feed our minds? So next time we see that, our instinct isn't to dissociate. It's right for us to be scared to see how all of us are going to have collective punishment. Of course, collective punishment is real, and that's why we fear it. But then when we turn it into something where we now disassociate and say, you can collect everyone who doesn't look like me, don't look like me, who doesn't act like me, we're sitting ducks because what we're doing is changing, moving the goalposts. So when they get rid of all the Chris Kabas, they're going to get rid of everyone who didn't get A-stars in GCSE. Yeah. Then they're going to get rid of everyone who didn't go to Russell Group universities because the goalpost keeps moving to some degree, whatever the topic is. Yes, Albie.
What are you talking about?
What do you mean, what am I talking about? Do you want me to clarify?
What do you mean?
Sorry?
Hold
on. Point. If we have a point, but Albie, if you have a point of blackness, sorry, we'll come back. Albie, we'll come back to you in a second. Sorry, besides, do you have anything else to say? Shall we go to Mr. Brown? Actually, round of applause for Albie. Sorry, do you want to pass that mic over? So we'll come back to you in the second, Tops, okay? Mr. Brown, we'd like to come to the centre, please, so we can see your pretty face.
Can I not stand here?
No, you can't. You can make your way to centre. Ladies and gentlemen, Simeon Brown, Channel 4 News, Morehouse, SARS, ACS, you name it, you can claim it.
I would say that I had a slightly unusual seat in that I was in court most days hearing the evidence and hearing the case. And based on what I heard in court, I would say that almost certainly Chris Kaba should still be alive. Almost certainly based on what I heard. And the tactic itself was severely flawed, and the police in somewhat were quite fortunate because they did not know who was driving that car at that moment in time. And in areas like that, it's very common for people to share cars. You might have 5, 10, 15 men sharing a car. So they were fortunate that it was Chris Kaba who was driving, and they were able to say this man was dangerous. But I think where there is a disconnect is that certainly, although there may be consensus in this room, even amongst people who are black and were invested in the case, people felt like this man was innocent, he was presented in a particular light, and then after the trial, when the pictures went around of the shooting in the nightclub, when the revelations came out about his partner, there was a sense that suddenly the police narrative had legitimacy, and that was the story that was dominant, when we were no longer talking about the flawed stop, we were no longer talking about the procedures that weren't followed, and we were no longer talking about police accountability, when that for me should have been the dominant focus because of the other elements that were not shared. And so I think that there should have been a greater honesty to bring the community with them, to be invested in the story, so that when everything played out, there was not this sense of, I didn't know that, or police narrative is legitimacy. There should have been an honesty, because fundamentally I think that there is a recognition that the way that black people are policed, there is a possibility that if you are black, you will see yourself in Chris Kaba. But there needed to be that sense of trust with the community, there needed to be a sense of sharing and honesty and saying, you know what, it doesn't matter about that. We need to talk about the fact that this man should still be alive. And I think that had that been shared earlier, you don't have this loss of faith, you don't have this loss of interest amongst people who are not of like minds. And fundamentally, building campaigns is about bringing people with you and building coalition and creating a sense of trust and ownership. So for me, that is where there is real disconnect. And people can frame it as respectability, but it's just about strategic comms and bringing your community with you. So for me, and certainly what I'm interested in now focusing on, is the tactic itself. Is the fact that this is a technique now that has evaded scrutiny. And in fact, the police officer himself has now been promoted. The police officer himself now are now pushing for greater protection for police. So this case was quite historic in the sense that not only was an officer charged for the crime, he was named, they were fighting that. All of these supposed high points now, all these moments, I guess, of progress and accountability are being pushed back because of this narrative. So for me, it's about how do you, or how do we better protect against that? And ultimately that comes with information sharing, that comes with building trust, that comes with honesty, and at least you're able to build a story in a way that brings people with you. Because even amongst community, there is a lot of consensus. And even when I speak to people who are from end, they're like, oh boy, you know what, man was involved in 18. And so it's like, in that sense, that is where I think the errors were. Because certainly from being in that court day in, day out, that man should be alive. It was flawed. Procedures were not followed properly. This is what officers who are firearms officers say have told me. And having looked back at the footage and gone through it in detail, you're like, there's no way this man should be dead. But that is not the conversation. And a lot of that is about the way that the stories are told.
Thank you. Thank you. We've got time. I'll get two really brief points. We'll come to our younger brother over here, then we're going to you tops, then we're going to wrap up. Then we're going to actually go to really cut down and closing statements, then we're going to wrap up. They're going to throw us out of here really quickly. So, bro.
Point of black.
My G.
I just wanted to make the point that we can't take criminality out of context, and even when you think about the the topic about activism and who should be the face of a movement for marketing purposes, when you think of someone like Malcolm X, he was a pimp, he was a drug dealer, he went to jail, and he spoke for a movement after. He wasn't killed in the process. Chris Kaba was killed prior to any kind of reform that he could have put into real life. Exactly. Another thing that I've kind of seen for myself, so I'm from Elton, right? Stephen Lawrence was killed in 93. I was born in 98. By the time 2010 came, I'd been through secondary school with the son of one of his killers. And this guy killed Stephen Lawrence and was free for all of that amount of time. In that, from my own personal experience, I've seen the way in which black men...
Sorry, you saw the child of one of Stephen Lawrence's killers went to school with you?
Well, my primary school.
And you saw the guy at the PTA?
And I've seen his pops. So when I saw Gary Dobson on the screen, I recognised him because I saw his son's face. And so the example or the case study I want to give is I've gone into law because I've seen a lot of my guys get excluded and their lives have been deteriorated by being excluded. I've been excluded myself, yeah? And on a respectability point, I've looked up to people like Tupac and Malcolm because they're able to articulate themselves, and as a result, they don't get discredited for the message they're trying to put forward. So I guess to some extent, I've played into it because I understand that there's a voice that I've had since I was young that wasn't listened to, but now that I'm in law, it is listened to. But I just don't want us to get lost in this idea that because someone is a criminal and there are contexts that create that criminality, that we shouldn't represent that person as well.
Thanks so much. Before we go, before you leave tonight, I'm going to insist that you meet Dilly Ogun and Peter Herbert. Those are our legals here, so they must know you and you must know them. So you're going to take the numbers too. Thank you so much. And then up top, we're going to meet you really briefly. Then we'll wrap up with Queen Aquia. Queen Aquia, are you speaking?
Yes.
Please.
Okay, so there's a lot that's been said, and I'm trying to keep it really, really concise. So anyone that follows my platform knows how much I hate respectability politics. Because
you look nice in that very nice jumper you're wearing right now. So,
yes, I just got it from the firm. Yes.
But you weren't ragamuffin in the firm, were you? You just like you came in the firm with a particular steez, didn't you, or so?
Yeah, but I show up as I am and who I am, and I'm proud of who I am.
Interesting.
But yeah, so respectability, right? So the reason why I hate it so much, right, is that nobody on this planet is perfect, right? None of us are perfect. We all make mistakes, right? No group of people are perfect. We will make mistakes at some point in our lives, some more serious than others, right? And I think for me, what this really just boils down to is human rights, right? And who is afforded rights over others, right? Chris Kaba's criminal past is irrelevant. Is absolutely irrelevant, okay? Ultimately, what it comes down to...
Irrelevant in law, but we're thinking about the actual marketing for black equality, which is for the actual community.
See, so this whole idea of marketing and it being different to respectability and stuff like that, whichever way you slice it, is respectability politics. Because whose marker, whose standard are we holding ourselves to? And ultimately, we are holding ourselves to a white supremacist society. Because the reason why there are certain people that are pushed to the forefront is because they are palatable, right? Because whiteness accepts them. That's the reason why. So if you want to call it marketing, whatever makes you feel comfortable, go with that, right? The reason why people wince at Chris Kaba is because he makes you feel uncomfortable, right? There is no perfect victim. There isn't. No perfect victim exists. I would actually argue, by virtue of being black in Britain, you're not perfect, right? There's always going to be an issue, right? And for me, when we're talking about human rights, we cannot place conditions on human rights. Because today it's you're a criminal. At one point it was being black. At one point it'll be being disabled. At one point it'll be being gay. At one point it's Palestinian, right? That if we start to place condition on who is allowed rights, it's a very, very slippery slope. And for black people in the room, we're at the bottom, right? So you may not like the fact that Chris Kaba is the face. Deal with it. Because he was a human being. And ultimately, you talk about principles, right? I don't like Chris Kaba's criminal past, but what I like is irrelevant. Our laws are not governed by your feelings, right? Laws are there for a reason, right? The police are not execution, right? We don't even have the death penalty in this country. If he's done something wrong, you arrest him, right? If he was fleeing arrest, that it still is not a death sentence, right? I think people need to understand what we're talking about here. We have due process in this country, and if Chris Kaba had done something wrong, if you've done something wrong, we have a court system that can do that. They are not God.
Final point. We're doing final point, sir. Queen, do you have something to say, or are you going to see to your brother? Please, please. The floor is yours, please, quick. Please. I didn't put the point of blackness in your mouth or anything else. It's like up to you.
What I wanted to say.
Yeah.
I think it was something along the lines of, I think someone said it's not to do with the black community. And I think it is because we are turned against each other.
It's being what? You say it's not to do with the black community. What do you mean by it in that situation?
So someone said it's not to do with black on black crime. And
Okay,
I disagree with that because we are turned against each other, which is why black on black crime happens. And also what I'd also like to say, as well as someone else spoke about it being a criminal, the next thing is you don't have all the A stars. I'm not an A-star student, but I'm not a criminal, and I don't have a criminal record, and I don't think that you can place being a criminal and your GCSE levels in the same category. But I also believe that you can't, like for example, as a woman in London, in Britain, just a woman in general, there are certain things I don't do when it's night time because I know it's not safe for me as a woman. So as a black man or as a man in general, I've had all these arguments. I've had these arguments with past boyfriends, blah, blah, blah. And if you know that you're a target, and if you decide to wear or act in a certain manner, for example, I have been there when ex-partners have been stopped by the police and say, oh, fuck the feds, you're a fucking pig, blah, blah, blah. What do you think is going to happen when you disrespect someone? What do you think is going to happen? No, you know, I didn't say you're going to be shot. Who said talk about being shot?
Point of blackness, point of blackness.
I'm just saying, if you are irrational and you are rude, people are going to react and respond to that.
But, sorry, what's your name?
A queer.
But Tiffany, you have to be really strict with this,
you
please.
just literally responded to what you just said.
Please.
The point is, God forbid, if Albie walked out and got in his car and the same thing happened.
Albie doesn't have a car. I'm joking.
But literally,
yeah.
do you see what I'm saying? Yeah. No on record, all of these things that you just mentioned. Yeah. The reason why your grades and your criminal history can be put in the same variable is the fact that you can't wear it. Right?
No, I hear
when
where
you're
you're coming
driving
from,
the
but
car,
my dad taught my
stop.
brother not to dress and act a certain way because of what he went through. So
We were all taught
why
by
continue
our
the
parents
circle?
for a certain
Why
reason.
continue the circle of negativity and
No, but
not
that's a
make
different
a change
conversation.
and be different?
It's a different conversation. Do you
Why
know
not?
what I mean?
No, I know, but not everyone can be a hero.
What
So
would be your argument if it
I know,
happened to
so I
Albie?
can go.
What would be your argument if it happened to Albie? That's a direct
It's
question.
not going to happen to me. That is the difference. That's the point. If I was stopped by the police, I wouldn't ram into them.
Sorry. Could somebody please pass me a sedative? Could somebody pass me a sedative, please? Because we've lost our minds here. You, microphone boys, are talking too now. Please, stop, please. We have no more time. Sorry. Aquia, please wrap up your point and Tiffany respond.
He would not respond in that manner. He would not attack them and be rude and he would not put himself in a position regardless of how it's
Okay. All right. Okay, sorry, guys. Okay. Aquia.
He would stop it. He would cut it off.
Would-
And sometimes you have to put your pride to one side.
I think you need to wait. You know, it's time over time. I'm saying it's not against what you're saying.
Yeah.
But I'm saying it's woman to woman.
Yeah.
Trust me, you do not want to ever be in a situation. I pray to God that you're never in a situation where you can identify and relate to the topic we're talking about.
I have been multiple times because of how I talk. I've not been in that situation.
I didn't say that.
I'm saying I get what you want.
All right. Okay, everyone. I'm gonna have to call this to a halt now. I'm gonna call this to a halt. Sorry. I'm so sorry. Guys, we are going to.
I've been on the receiving end.
Okay. Busayo.
My friend came back from graduation. He knocked on his door to go home. The police shot him 3 times in the back. And they said he was a thug. They said he was a thug. He was not a gang. He was not involved in a gang. He got killed for nothing. He graduated. He came home.
Okay, guys. All right. Busayo, sorry. All right, everybody, round of applause for our contributors. Thank you very much. Thank you. Really swiftly. Kemi, 30 seconds for your closing statement, please. 30 seconds, Kemi, please. Quick.
You introduced me as Florence Nigel Farrar. People often ask me how I manage to stay cool when I'm on TV with these sorts of people, with racists shouting at me, saying all kinds of abuse. Honestly, it's childhood trauma. It means that I'm excessively, overly emotionally regulated. I control my emotions in a way that is basically inhuman, which is necessary, because if there was ever a 30-second clip of me being angry, then the angry black man trope would follow me for the rest of my career. I can never allow that to happen, which is the irony, because humans get angry when they're shouted at, hurled at with abuse, which means that in order to be treated as a real human being, I have to act as if I'm not a real human being. That's the problem. But the point is about the Susan was raising is this difference between how we as activists and commentators should act and who deserves rights, as you were saying. This is about human rights. It's the same thing that happens when you have a trial of violence against women. If a woman acts in a human way during the trial or during the act, then suddenly she's not a perfect victim. Everybody deserves rights. If we start drawing lines, then we have no principles whatsoever. It's the same thing with abortion. If you only support abortion in the cases of incest and rape, you don't support a woman's right to choose. When we have these principles, they should apply across the board.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Shall we come to Ricardo? Would you like to give your closing statement? Or you can respond to what Akua said. Sure, shall I give you the microphone? You've got 30 seconds, quickly. Yeah. Do you want to come into the centre, Ricardo, please? We're going to wrap. We're going to get thrown out of here pretty quickly.
One last 30 seconds.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
Sure.
Is this working? What you ladies were saying was perfect. What you were saying, hand on heart, I fully don't understand. Because again, my mother taught me well. I made myself tons of money. I purchased a very nice car. And within 6 weeks, I got pulled over 21 times. In 6 weeks. Well, hold on. But it doesn't matter.
That's the difference between Chris Kaba
and... No, he's making a closing statement. Albie, you've been in the ring before.
Can I finish? I did not. But hold on. But 1 second. I didn't.
Did you tell him to fuck off?
Take the mic out of him. Take the mic out of him.
No, I don't think he didn't. He didn't swear at you. He didn't swear.
That's my only point. Is knowing how to behave and act in a situation.
Well, hold on. If you let me land, if you let me land, you would hear it.
1 second. Everybody just relax.
The first few times, I acted accordingly. But after a number of times, that thing that my mum taught me went out of the window. And hence why you guys can see in the video where, in 2020, where I jumped out of the car, because I now have my family in the car. So all that you're taught goes out the window, because now you're in fight or flight. My family is my priority. And he's probably thinking about the same thing, because he had a child not long after.
He's ramped to a police car, isn't
Oh, please, Ricardo, please, we're going to wrap up.
Anyway, yeah, I'm just saying this, no matter what you're taught, no matter what you do, no matter how much money you make, no matter what you do in life, you're still black. And at the end of the day, you're still black. No matter,
No, I'm saying my dad had a family at the time, and he told everyone.
And I do. Listen, I now have a family.
This is a closing statement. Akua, you know how this goes. Come on, Ricardo, please wrap up.
I fully understand. I fully get what you're saying. What I'm trying to say is.
Ricardo, please wrap up. Yeah.
Yes. End of the day, it's this. No matter what you do, no matter what you say, they're still going to treat you the same way. And what they do is they protect themselves. At the end of it, they're going to protect themselves. They're going to lie, they're going to connive, they're going to sneak their way out of it, and they're going to still, at the end of the day, protect themselves. So no matter what you do, how you act, swearing, all of that, they still see you as black at first. And that is what they did to me. They jumped out the car. The first time they jumped out the car, they said that the car was connected to the violent area because the area that I lived in. Nothing to do with the colour of my skin. My partner and my son were at the back of the car. They saw me. They connected myself, a black man in a nice car, and they said that car was connected to drugs and weapons.
Ricardo, thank you so much. Thank you, Ricardo. Thank you so much. Thank you. Round of applause. Leanne, I know you've got 30 seconds for your closing statement. Come on, guys, respect the speaker, please.
To deem someone less worthy of advocacy because of their history or shortcomings really shows that I don't know, it shows that humanity is on life support, basically. As a teenager, I was stopped in a mall in northwest London. I'm from West London, and it was me and my sisters.
Brent Cross.
No, it was actually in
Whiteley's.
Harrow. We'd never been there before, we were just walking around, and we had police come up to us and say, oh there's been some theft in one of the stores, and you guys fit the description. Now, that was the day I became an activist. Do you understand? I was the younger sister, but I just went mad because I couldn't understand how we could be innocently walking, have a mother who's an evangelist and who taught us well, be stopped by police. Anyway, all I'm saying is it proves that our humanity is on life support, and worse still, that we actually think that we can play God. That's all I've got to say.
Thank you so much, Leanne. Thank you so much. Michael Morgan, please. You have 30 seconds. Thank you so much.
No justice!
No peace!
No justice!
No peace!
No justice!
No peace!
These loud voices need to drown out the energy vampires in the room. We know who they are. They continue to sap our energy. These agents are sent to sap our energy. We have to have stamina. No justice!
No peace! Thank you, Michael. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. And last, but certainly not least, Belle, please. Belle Riviera-Addy, thank you so much. Thank you.
We've asked 2 questions today. First is, what is a criminal? And the reality is, a criminal is somebody who gets caught for committing a crime. There are loads of people that commit crimes all the time, but the fact is you are more likely to face a harsher sentence, or actually face harsher contact with the police if you are black. The other question is, what is respectability? And I point to the fact that, you know, members of parliament are considered respectable. Perhaps some of you shouldn't necessarily think that. But I know a number of members of parliament who, because of the colour of their skin, have been asked if they're cleaners, have been handed someone else's bag to carry because they didn't know that they're a member of why you were handing someone else your bag. I myself have been asked if I'm an intern at age 35, and at that time a chief of staff for Diane Abbott. There are so many different things that happen to people in a place that's meant to be respectful when they hold a position that is meant to be respectful because of the colour of their skin. And you can't detach yourself from that. Now, the only place I don't get, is, if you're in a shop, you get followed around often if you're black. Not in my local Sainsbury's local, because they know me there. Other places, that does happen to me. It still happens to me. Now, to date, there have been 1,908 deaths in police custody or otherwise following contact with the police in England and Wales since 1990. Only 3 officers have ever faced any sort of prosecution. I make that point because I think it's important to realise what the issues are and who is more likely to face an issue. And it's young black men in terms of these numbers who are making up most of these numbers. Now, I'm not anti-police, but I'm pro-accountability. I don't think it's wrong for us to ask questions of people that are meant to police us. And no one's asking for Chris Kaba to be the face of a movement. That's been the question that we're asking here. I think most people just want him to have been treated like a human being.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Do we need to vote on this? No. Let's do this. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much to all of you for coming out, for your contributions, for your thoughts, for your wisdom, your integrity, your indefatigability, your disagreements, your agreements, your compliments, and your condescension, if that's even a word. So I want to thank you, all of you. It's actually an honour when one of you just actually chooses to come here, and it's even greater honour when some of you choose and to opt to come and speak here. So honestly, this is our first anniversary. This is literally 1 year to the day that we started up. So thank you so much, everybody, for all of the contributions, to everybody, to my brother Albert, to my nephew Albie, who was at the first Uppity ever or so, who was one of the speakers there or so. I know he can be, well, we won it together, we're on the same side, to everything else. So to Belle, who was also at the first one too, so to everybody, to Uppity legend, Messiah Twins, to Femi, who's done several or so, to Tops, to my brain trust over here of it, to our timekeepers, to Jay, my guy, to Jay, my right hand man, my partner also, to George who's not here today, to Victor, to everybody, thank you so much. We are now off for Christmas. So we are going to take Christmas off because there's not going to be an Uppity in Christmas for December, and because you're all going to be broke in January or so, there's not going to be an Uppity in January. We'll be back in February in full effect, unless, should Kemi Badenoch become Prime Minister between now and then or so, we will quickly assemble Uppity before we're all sent to Rwanda. Have a great evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for your time. Bless you all. Bless you all. Bless you all. Take care. See you in February. Thank you, all of you.